Hello, and thank you for joining us on this month's episode of Birmingham Business TV. My name is Davis. I am so happy to be joined today by Charlotte. Charlotte, welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks for having me. Yeah, we've got a really exciting show coming up today.
Definitely, we do have an exciting show. We're live at the city centre of Birmingham at the Liquid Media Centre, and we've got an amazing show lined up today. You know, I'm excited about the fact that I'm going to be talking to some Bromley legends on the show today. You want to find out what they are, but Charlotte, what else have we got today?
We've got the Joel Blake Business Show coming up, and I'm also interviewing the CEO from Edgbaston Stadium, which is really, really exciting.
Absolutely. And we're going to be having some interesting conversations around some hot topics. I'm not going to tell you what it is just yet, but we have that coming up. We've got the news bulletin. It's going to be a packed show. Stay tuned. Conversations around artificial intelligence has been dominating the airwaves ever since the last quarter of last year with the launch of ChatGPT. Businesses and individuals alike ever since have been trying to grapple with this new phenomenon, this new technology that has come to shape the way we live and do business. I've got some fantastic experts in the room with whom I'm going to be having a conversation about all things artificial intelligence. Welcome, gentlemen. You're welcome to the show today. So today I've got Chris Meir, who is the founder and CEO of School of Code. I've got Sabin Nair, who's in the room as well. And Sabin is the founder of Origin 21. And I've got Bjorn Hettenhjorn, who is the transformation director at Visual Limited, which is a part of the Nordfor Group. Welcome, gentlemen.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Yeah. Okay, great. So let's get started with this conversation around artificial intelligence. It's a very interesting topic, but it's been around for a while. We've been talking about it. I mean, we hear about it every now and then, but it only really came to the fore, at least for the general populace, around the third and fourth quarter of last year with the launch of ChatGPT. I think the place that I'd like to get started with, and I'd like every one of you to weigh in on this, probably starting with you, is what do you make of artificial intelligence generally? I mean, you're subject matter expert in your own right, but generally speaking, both as a business person, as an individual, what do you make of it?
Yeah, small question to get started with. What do I make of artificial intelligence generally? Like you say, I mean, it's in the public consciousness now from the last year, and you can see that as a hype. And there are cycles of AI hype, known as AI summers and AI winters. And what usually happens is there's a load of hype and it doesn't live up to the hype, and then all the funding dries up, and then there's a period of just winter, right? Like desolation. It's confined back to the sort of academic drawing board sort of thing. But there's a big difference, I think, in this one, which is actually the techniques used for all of the hype recently have been around for 50 years. So it's not the techniques that have changed, although they've been optimized. Actually, it's the compute power and the amount of data. So that the types of artificial intelligence and the types of machine learning that are really taking off all need massive amounts of data and massive amounts of compute power to be realistic, right? So they could be the same techniques of 5, 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, but actually because now there's more data created than ever before, each year we've got more data created than has ever existed, and you've now got in your iPhone, you've got more compute power than put people on the moon. You know, we're just in a different world of actually even these rudimentary techniques can now have like massive
compute power.
Exactly.
And also
and
the
outcomes.
availability of data as well has really transformed a lot of that. And
That's it.
Sabin, what is it that you make of artificial intelligence? The fears, the hysteria, the opportunities. What are your thoughts?
Look, it's interesting. You say 50 years. It's actually in I think it's 1931, a guy by the name of Alan Turing, a British guy. He's actually the one that postulated artificial intelligence. And again, the thing that held everything back was the access to powerful computers. And it's actually the first AI algorithm was written in 1955 by Christopher Stachy, I think it's called. And it was actually a checkers game. So it's been around for ages. The thing that's accelerated it, yes, the power of computing. And I think, we work in process control automation, and the biggest drive we've seen recently is massive data centers. Data centers coming up all over the place, and it gives you access to powerful cloud computing. And that's actually where the true engine of AI lies. It's in the data. And I think that's the fundamental thing, having the data and then having the processing power in order to analyze the data. Fantastic. And from that, obviously, you can, you get the artificial intelligence.
Fantastic. And Bjorn, would it be the same for you, or what other perspectives do you think needs to be put to the fore when it comes to AI?
Yeah, so for me, AI has been, as my colleagues already said, has been around for quite a long while. And probably everybody has an iPhone, an Android phone, and using Siri and Alexa and all the other products. And nobody really pays any attention anymore that all these things are driven by AI as a technology. So everybody is using the voice assistants that you have today. But for me, I almost want to call it another, maybe the fifth industrial revolution that we see right now through the use of the GPT capabilities. And GPT is around for a while. So at the moment, we're using 3.5 or even version 4. Some people can already use version 4. And with that larger data set, as Chris described, that's really why we now have these massively increased capabilities. And again, they will and have already had seen some introduction into commercial products. Microsoft have released things like Copilot for all their Office and Dynamics products, and maybe even into Azure. But that's really why we see the big uptake now, because suddenly it becomes accessible to the wider public.
I think it's a very interesting conversation, and what you just brought up as well, in terms of it being sort of like the dawn of Industrial Revolution 5.0, because the way that I see artificial intelligence, unlike something like the metaverse or blockchain, which are just pieces of technologies that open up new possibilities, artificial intelligence cuts across. It becomes sort of like one of those underlying technologies that society is built upon. However, there could be some challenges around that. I mean, we already have issues around privacy, around programming bias. We already have issues around misinformation and just outright falsehood, and as people begin to grapple with this new thing, and everybody say, no, you should try this AI tool and that, how should we factor these challenges into our thinking, whether or not we adopt it or how we utilize it? So how do those challenges factor into the thinking of different consumers of AI products?
Yeah, well, I would say it's there's one answer which is hopeful, which is actually we can use a little bit of thinking before we act and analyze, what are the pros and cons of this technology. But the truth is, as we know, like, technology is essentially Pandora's box. And so it's really difficult to see a world where people are going to be making those decisions. Convenience is a vice, and this type of technology just makes convenience. It takes it to a whole new level.
So it's convenience on steroids.
Exactly, yeah. So you could, you're heading into a future of sort of just-in-time software sometimes, where you at the moment there has to be a company existing for years and years building some software towards solving your problem. But you're one of many people that have that problem, so it's a bit generic, might be a bit personalized. There's a future coming where actually you could say, I want the problem solved in this exact way, and within a couple of minutes you have custom-made software spat out and for you to use, right? So that's going to be very hard for people not to engage with and say, no, I'm gonna take the slow way, actually. So.
And that's quite interesting. Bjorn, in your opinion, like Chris has said, there's this optimism there because it just makes for great optimism. But shouldn't we be pumping the brakes? What are your thoughts?
I think with any technology, we need to introduce a right framework of rules and policies of how technology is adopted. When cars came out, there was a highway code introduced and rules and who should drive on which side of the road. With AI, it's the same thing. AI needs to be accessible, but AI needs to have the right governance that what data is put into the data set in order to train AI. That's basically what it is. And we need to make sure that that data set is representative of all the information that we have available today, so that it doesn't become biased, or with as little bias as possible. And I think then we take a responsible approach towards AI, and that's the most important thing.
And I think that segues perfectly into the open letter that was released on the Future of Life Institute's website on the 22nd of March. That had the signature of currently has signature of over 20,000 AI experts. Notable amongst the names are Elon Musk and Steve Wozniak, the co-founder of Apple. And literally, for those who wouldn't know what is in that open letter, it's literally a call from the leading experts of artificial intelligence across the world for all AI labs to halt, the development and the training of new AI models, advanced AI models, for the next 6 months, for the sole purpose of making sure that that 6 months is utilized to develop, safety guidelines and safety protocols that would make sure that, AI doesn't end civilization, essentially. But then there's also been, reports in the media with talking about some other notable people saying, not necessarily point some cold water on that. The Bill Gates has been mentioned to be in that camp and things of that nature. What do you make of this, industry leaders being the one to lead this charge? And beyond, you just talked about it as well in terms of, creating the highway code, for this vehicle called artificial intelligence. What do you make of all of this, and who should be leading on that responsibility? And I want to start with you, Sabin, on that one.
I think we're walking a very thin ethical line when it comes to AI, because the problem with AI, it's a program that's been developed to analyze data without emotion. Can you imagine having a doctor that has to decide whether or not to pull the plug based on the probability of whether he thinks you're going to survive or not? I mean, and the question you asked is, who should be the leader of this? I mean, do you really think Elon Musk could be the one that would take that sort of emotional decision? So we've got to be very, very careful. And the problem actually is that the way the internet was developed, it was developed without foresight. So your data is already out there. The problem now is going to be trying to find what data is out there and how do you secure that? And I think that's a bigger problem. It's a problem waiting to happen.
I think that the way you put it is so fascinating, doctors without emotions and things of that nature. And, one of the things that was in that open letter that came out was the conversation around, do we want unelected tech leaders being the one developing tools that are literally just shaping our civilization and our society? What are your thoughts on this one, Chris?
Yeah, so I signed that letter, but not that anyone listens to it. My bachelor's, master's and PhD were all in AI, loved it, but I felt like actually society wasn't ready for the changes that AI would bring. I saw mass disruption of livelihoods, mass automation of things, and yes, sometimes there'll be new jobs created, but how are you going to take somebody that's been driving lorries for 20 years and then say, oh, actually, don't worry, now you're managing these AI systems or creating it? It's not going to happen. So that's what School of Code is. It's a retraining scheme to try and help people get more technical, more problem-solving focused so that they can thrive in that sort of environment. But I do think there needs to be a global discussion, because most people haven't wrestled with this problem of really what you're creating is an intelligence, and how you put that back in a box is difficult. So I think it makes sense to me to pause in the same way that some of the advocates would say, you can't necessarily pause technology, but we did that with things like nuclear weapons, right? We realised there was actually, great potential, but there's great potential harms. There's some actors in the world that might not use them for the same means that you might want to use them for, might not be as safety conscious, right? So let's actually sit down and think about what are the frameworks that we need to put around this to make as even a playing field as possible. But even then, I just think it's inescapable.
I mean, considering the fact that the North Star seems to be this race towards artificial general intelligence, where the AI is way better than human cognitive ability and things of that nature. And beyond, from your perspective, who should be pumping the brakes? You know, this letter's come out. Who should be taking action? Should the AI labs respond? Should government step in to say, you know what, we're going to stop everything and put in legislation? Where does that work start?
So for me, again, I don't think we need to put on the brakes. I agree we need to put the framework in place that artificial intelligence becomes well guarded and managed and monitored. But again, we have the same rules for other internet processes. What domain names can you use on the internet? How do all the internet servers communicate with each other? Who owns the responsibility for country domain names and things like that? So we are, as a society, we have all the abilities to do this. I don't think we need a government-led approach, but just a international consortium of decision makers who drive policy, obviously in the interest of all of us. The other aspect, I think we need to be mindful of all the capabilities that we see coming through GPT today are either the chat-based, and again, also the text-to-image capabilities and all those features that we have. I don't think we need to be scared about people's jobs, or that suddenly a machine will just take over and make the decision. We are not there yet, and therefore that's one of the reasons why I think we don't need to turn anything off or hold development. I think we can leverage the momentum that we have today and all the insights that we are gaining to develop AI further and make it more manageable and obviously secure in a sense for our society.
Fantastic. And I think that that's a perfect segue to talk about, you know, leveraging the opportunities that it brings. And we have lots of business leaders and small business owners that watch this show. And for those, you know, people that watch, I want to ask, there's this industry level conversation around AI, and we've been having that conversation as well. But when it comes to leveraging the opportunities, you know, how should small business approach you know, the opportunities that AI presents, and how can small businesses participate in the opportunities that it brings?
I guess it depends what you mean by participate in the opportunities, and just to Bjorn's point there, I think you know, we do have a lot of capability to have the discussions, right? But the discussions will come too late, and it's very hard to retrospectively, you know, or punitively put things back. It just doesn't work like that. So that's why I think it's really important to have these discussions up front. Because, for example, we could give advice to small businesses today that say, hey, just like outsourcing unlocked a ton of potential, but also disrupted a lot of established jobs and markets, right? There's whole communities that have been left behind by offshoring and outsourcing. But there's a ton of potential for the individual business person to run lean, run quickly, run agile. So we could give some advice that says, hey, personal assistants, essentially a lot of that now can be democratized for $20 a month. If you want someone to put together briefs and research and this and that will only get better. You could say, okay, how can you leverage the AI APIs so that you can build services for your audience and your customers on top of that? But the truth of the matter is, whatever we say today will be irrelevant tomorrow and next week and the week after, because this stuff is exponentially getting better, and that's just the pattern of evolution. Evolution created us, right? And evolution is a really simple process. It's stupid, okay? You need a lot of failure to get ahead in evolution, which is billions of years of us. This is different because this is evolution that can know everything that all of humankind has ever known at once, can remember that information, take it to different contexts and improve itself. And when we get to the point which we're at now, which is not just the data that we've captured, but AI being trained on simulated data, so it can generate its own data, right? Now you've got, okay, it took however many billion years to create us. How many iterations and how many evolutions can happen? Infinitely more, infinitely better, infinitely more optimized. So I think, you know, it's really hard to understand the pace of change that is about to happen. So yeah, my advice is just get ready for a lot of change.
Interesting. Get ready for a lot of change. Is a good one. Saben, your thoughts on how small businesses should be reacting to this?
I think the first thing is protect your assets. And right now, your biggest asset is your information. So if you're a small business, gather as much information on your processes, on your, but basically everything that has to do with your business, because that's the information that you can use later on to analyze your business, to plan for your business. And that's where you can leverage AI. The other thing as well is, I would also say, don't be too hasty to go out and develop your own AI. It's out there, you know. There's software as a service. There's also AI as a service. You know, explore this as an opportunity for you. There's no need to reinvent the wheel, especially not as a small company.
And that's what I was going to touch on in my next question. And I'll let you still stay on that, and then I'll come to beyond in a minute. So if I run a business and I want to build an AI solution, I'm not a technology person. I haven't studied AI at every level like you have. Where do I get started? You know, I want to bring an AI innovation into what we do. I want to create an AI-driven product for our customers. Where do I start that thought? Sabin?
I was going to say ChatGPT. That's probably not the right answer. Look, I'm no expert in it as well, because in our industry, we use a lot of software that's already got AI built into it. So the first place I would probably start is I would contact Amazon or Google that have already got these frameworks in place and say, listen, this is my business. What tools do you have? It's almost like you know, looking for a specific app or a specific API that you can apply for your business. There are generic ones that you can already apply to your business. All you have to do is feed it the information.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Beyond, what are your thoughts in terms of how small businesses can build on top of what is out there?
And it's good that you raise this, not just small businesses, but even larger, medium or large enterprises. They all want to leverage the capabilities, because if you do this, you can stay ahead of the game. You can beat your competition or just improve your business processes. So like Sabin and Chris just said, leveraging AI is, there are lots of ways to do this. We as Visual, obviously we are a Microsoft partner. We implement this in Microsoft Azure, so the cloud capabilities. There are lots of variations of how AI is already available. You can do things like object detection, which could be useful in a manufacturing process, or sentiment analysis to understand, okay, what is really the underlying message and sentiment somebody's speaking and talking about. That could be useful in any service desk scenario, for example, wherever you have customer interaction. So there's a full broad range of capabilities. Even ChatGPT, to mention it, is now available through Microsoft in your own Azure tenant, and we already have worked with one customer, and it was an interesting scenario. They were looking to analyze clients' CVs to understand and let AI judge how well a CV is matched against a role profile. And to take that even further, it's not just word matching, but really understanding different roles. Is a role description matching and worthwhile and well described? So lots of different capabilities out there.
Fantastic. And Chris, I want to talk a bit about, you know, following on from that, you know, train of thought. If businesses are going to be relying more on this, and even consumers, I'm going to come to a consumer question even as we begin to wrap. If businesses are going to be relying on more on this as a tool, whether for their internal processes or as part of their business development and product development processes, where does the question of trust lie? I mean,
well, interesting question. So I think just building on what the guys were saying here, I think actually it's going to be really easy to make a lot of progress in a short space of time, where a lot of incumbent companies that might have a load of information or processes, actually that can be replicated really quickly. So actually, I think it becomes your audience is really important. So service companies will be disrupted quite a lot, but actually products and audience, if you've got an audience that you're satisfying and they come to you, this helps accelerate the ability for you to deliver to them more personalized service, all of that sort of stuff. So I think it is going to be really interesting. It can go one or two ways in my view. Either it's sort of like refrigeration. So when the fridge was invented, right, it's not the people who made the fridges that were like the world's, cartel or whatever. Yeah. It was people like Coca-Cola who, built an empire on top of that. So the optimist in me says, do you know what, maybe we'll get a couple of really innovative solutions built on top of these APIs. So even though OpenAI and Amazon and Microsoft provide these services and obviously get paid very well for them, there will be some other companies really innovating on top of them that really disrupt you. That's the optimist in me. The realist in me says, actually, it probably goes one of two ways. Hyper-local content, so things like, you will be able to, a film that we would go and watch at the cinema today would take years and millions of pounds and acting talent. You will be able to, with a text prompt, create a film like that in a couple of minutes. And so it becomes, well, where is the value in that process anymore? So yeah, the audience is the value, because if you trust, to come to your point, if a big studio has a lot of trust and a lot of audience, then maybe they'll still consume that. But you could also say, I come here and I say, hey guys, I've got a film I want to show you actually, and it's a custom film, and maybe you get a bit more of this, what we've experienced over the last few years with social media, a bit more of these bubbles forming, where actually you can consume every piece of content custom to you, which is both good, and we've seen a lot of negatives there in terms of like how society can cope and react to that. So I think there's a load of questions we need answering in terms of, is this an agglomeration of power with a few companies, and everyone else figuring it out? Is it a load of broken up pieces of society that all feed themselves the information they want, or is it something in between?
Thank you so much for that, Chris. And to every single one watching, there's so many questions that are yet to be answered when it comes to artificial intelligence. So we want you to be a part of the conversation. So as you're watching this, make sure that you drop your comments, your thoughts, your questions. I'm going to be tagging these guys on LinkedIn as well and asking them to follow up on this question. But the last one I'm going to put to you guys, and I want everyone to answer this. So personally, what has been your favorite AI tool thus far? So I'm going to start with you, Bjorn. What would be your favorite AI tool? And and then we'll just go across the room.
Yeah. So for me, clearly ChatGPT is amazing with its capabilities, but to the point Chris made, that you can use just text to describe what you want, and it creates an image, a painting, or even now already videos. For me, this is just mind blowing. I think there's a next iteration that we need to look out for, and maybe blockchain comes back into play for this. How do we validate that there is an authentic photo of me, or is it AI generated? And the same for a video. So how do we get authenticity back into this AI created content? But yeah, very exciting times.
Very exciting times indeed. Your favorite tool, Chris?
Well, I'd have to say something like ChatGPT, because it's literally, I mean, the fastest growing app ever.
Absolutely.
Ridiculous. So, that's really changed the landscape in a lot of people's consciousness about what AI is and what it can do. I'd probably say something like Copilot, GitHub Copilot, which helps you write code, which means every engineer, if they take advantage of that, will be in the top 10% of engineers that have ever lived in terms of productivity, regardless of natural talent, which is amazing, right? So that's the standing on the shoulders of giants. We just need to see, actually, where does that get us to, and actually how long have we got?
Get there? And Tavin, what's been your favorite tool?
It used to be ChatGPT until a few days ago, until I found out how Samsung leaked some of their IP through ChatGPT. Don't know if you've seen that article, but interesting enough, my wife showed me a little. I don't even know what program it was, but essentially the new Barbie movie is being launched, and you can put your kid's photo, your favorite pet's photo in that Barbie, and they're using that for viral marketing. And I think that's amazing.
Incredible. Yeah. I mean, again, when it comes to artificial intelligence, the possibilities are endless. I mean, I've been using all of the new AI-driven features that Canva has put into their new design, which they launched a couple of weeks ago. I'm a big Canva user, and that's been truly remarkable. Gentlemen, thank you so much for coming on the panel today. It's been a great conversation, but we can be rest assured that this conversation is going to continue online. So guys, please make sure that you drop your comments. It's been a fantastic conversation. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thanks a lot.
Cheers. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Stay tuned. We've got more to come.
and welcome. We have Stuart Cain joining us today from Warwickshire County Cricket Club, and we're going to be talking all things cricket and much more. So thank you for joining us.
Pleasure.
I suppose we should touch on the fact that it's the start of the cricket season.
Yep.
I think if we look at Edgbaston and the prestige landmark that it is, I suppose, how do you feel that it's one of the few landmarks that can hold the Ashes? Just
Yep.
to kind of start off with that as a bit of a big subject.
Yeah, I mean, we started playing in the county championship this weekend, so won't lie, it was a bit cold standing on the outfield at Taunton in Somerset, but it was good to get the season going again because the players have been a little bit sort of stir crazy with the rain. They haven't been able to get outside as much as they wanted, so it was good just to start to get the ring rust moving on really and get them playing. And we had a good game in the end. We lost today with rain, but we batted well, bowled well. That's all you can ask for in the first game, so that's good. But yeah, once the cricket does get going, we've got the Ashes to look forward to this summer. And what's great is we've got the men's and women's Ashes at Edgbaston, which will be great. So the men's Ashes is sold out for the 4 days already. Over 100,000 people coming to Birmingham. And that's a big boost for the city because it's not just about the cricket, it's about the hotels they're staying in, the restaurants they're drinking in, the bars they're using, the restaurants they're eating in, the bars they're using, the the taxi businesses, etc. So it's a big boost when a big game comes to town. And then a little bit later, 4 or 5 weeks later, we've got the Women's Ashes, which will be the first time that the women have played international cricket as well in an Ashes series. And we're the leading selling venue at the moment. We've got over 16,000 tickets sold, so we're fingers crossed hoping for about 20,000 people there, which will be a record crowd for women's international cricket as well. So there's a lot really to look forward to because the beauty of Edgbaston is you've got the domestic cricket, the county championship, you've got the Blast with the Bears, the T20 cricket. Now you've also got Birmingham Phoenix with the 100. You've got the women's cricket with the Central Sparks, and then you've got England coming to town as well. So. Yeah, it's a pretty busy 4 or 5 months, but it's sort of what we live for, really.
Yeah, definitely. And I suppose putting England, to one side at the minute and all the other areas of cricket, and you touched on it but what does that kind of mean? What's that economic impact for the region, in your opinion?
Well, it's in 2019 when the World Cup was here, the ICC World Cup, we staged a series of games, and I think the City Council did a report, and I think we generated over £65 million worth of economic impact. So that's people directly spending money in the city that they wouldn't have spent if it wasn't for the cricket. So for the leisure economy, the tourism economy, etc., it's a really powerful tool to have international cricket coming to town. But equally, it's about the profile and the platform, because for that week in June, the eyes of the cricketing world or the sporting world will be looking at Birmingham and Edgbaston. So you have journalists from all around the world here. So again, we work very closely with West Midlands Growth Company and West Midlands Combined Authority and Birmingham City Council to make sure that we maximise the opportunities. So that the Combined Authority, Andy Street, will be inviting guests to the Ashes. The City Council, Ian Ward, will be doing the same. We'll be profiling some of the things that the city's got to offer outside of the cricket to some of those journalists that are here. So hopefully when they go back to Australia or to India or to the West Indies or wherever they may be from, they're not just writing positively about the cricket, but they're also writing very positively about the city. And if you look at Birmingham today, it's got so much to offer. I can't see how anybody can come here and not be impressed with the way the city has been regenerated and the offering that we've got now in terms of the hotels, the restaurants, bar, leisure attractions, etc. So it's a big summer from the sports point of view, but it's also a big summer from a city point of view, because of the money it will create, money it will bring into the region, but also the platform it will give us to promote the city, which on the back of the Commonwealth Games last year, it's great to keep having these big international events that mean that you don't just hear today, gone tomorrow. You were here last year with the Commonwealth Games, you're here this year with the Ashes. We've just had the squash, I think, at Edgbaston Priory. There's a whole raft of other international events coming up in the city. So it's good to be part of that network, really, and be able to help put Birmingham on the map, as well as help the city come back after COVID, because I know it's becoming a bit of a distant memory now, but we were one of the first large-scale events to be held after COVID. We had the New Zealand Test match at Edgbaston, and again, with the help of Ian Ward and Andy Street, we managed to get about 20,000 people in to watch Test cricket. And again, that was just a way of trying to get the city's leisure economy moving again after a pretty tough couple of years. So yeah, we're looking forward to the summer, and I'm hopeful there's a few hoteliers and bar owners and restaurant owners that are too.
Yeah, I think it's definitely a platform, isn't it, that local businesses and even a bit more of a wider reach businesses that they can really tap into and kind of make the most of the fact that these games are happening, and it really helps boost their business, which actually then for the region is so positive in itself. I suppose from a social impact, you know, we're looking at all these jobs that are being hopefully created to do with the cricket. What is it that you guys are focusing on at the moment from a kind of a social and a community aspect?
Well, I think if you look back at most sports clubs, whether it be football clubs, rugby clubs, cricket clubs, they all started as community clubs or social clubs. And they grow into professional sports. And I think one of the things that professional sport has grappled with over the recent years is how do you maintain the professionalism of sport at elite level, but equally how do you retain some of those community values that started a lot of these clubs, whether it be Aston Villa or Wolves or West Brom. They probably all started with a boys club somewhere or a social club. So one of the things we've been working hard on at Edgbaston is how do we make it feel safe and welcome for everybody, regardless of who you are, whether you're a professional male cricketer or a professional women's cricketer, whether you're a visitor in the stands, whether you're an employee in the offices. How do we make it feel as though you belong? Okay. So we've worked very hard at that, and a key part of that really is how do we make sure that the Edgbaston stadium feels safe and welcome for big games? So we've spent a lot of time and effort now trying to change the way that the venue feels. So there's a family stand where you can go. There's no alcohol in the family stand. There's no alcohol served at the bars behind that stand. Or equally, if you want to go to the Hollies and dress up as a penguin and have a few beers, you can equally do that as well. So it's Edgbaston for everyone. It's not about saying it's inclusive or exclusive. It's about making sure that whoever you are, you can have the right day out. So we've changed the physical feel of the venue quite a lot. We've introduced sensory rooms now to help people with neurodiversity issues and autism, which went down really well last summer. We've got 3 multi-faith rooms now, so people from any faith can go and reflect in quiet periods during games. As I say, we've changed the food and drink offering. We've created the alcohol-free areas, but equally we've kept the party areas as well. So I think we've done a lot of work there, and particularly with the 100, been able to bring in new audiences. A lot more women are coming to watch the 100 cricket, a lot younger audiences, a lot more families, and a lot more diverse audiences are coming in to watch that cricket, which is great. And we've also invested quite a lot in the consequence of bad behaviour, because it's okay to say, please be tolerant, it's okay to put the posters up. But the reality is that if you think for the Ashes, we'll have over 100,000 people at Edgbaston. So that's the size of a decent town. And if you think every town has got its fair share of racists, bigots, sexists, unfortunately, and we can't stop that, but what we can do is make sure that if somebody comes into Edgbaston and they misbehave, it gets picked up very quickly, and it's seen that there's real consequence. And that happened last year when we had the India Test match. There was an incident of some racist abuse in the Hollies stand. Now, the people that unfortunately were on the wrong end of that reported it. We invested over £500,000 in some high definition CCTV cameras last year. So literally it can pick up exactly what you're saying. So once we'd pinpointed exactly where these people were, we'll be able to work with West Midlands Police, handed over the footage, and that the 2 gentlemen involved were charged with a racially aggravated public order offence. That's brilliant to me. It's a real shame that it happened, but it's brilliant that there's consequence, because that very quickly gets around. This behaviour is just not tolerated. And there was a couple of ladies in another stand and a couple of women in another stand. Unfortunately, they were sort of on the back end of some sexist, misogynistic behaviour, which again isn't appropriate. So we invested in through our app, you can literally press a red button at the top of the app now and report an incident live. It goes straight through to the control room, and someone triages all of the things that come in. And they're literally sitting next to the safety officer and the police. So the second that came in, realised we've got a problem, the police and some supervisor went in, spoke to the lads involved, and they were rejected. So again, real consequence. So I think the mix of proactive, positive things like the autism sensory rooms, the changing the food offering, the drink offering, the family enclosure, the prayer rooms, etc. is great, but you need that reactive side as well. Because the best way of proving to people that somewhere is safe and welcoming is to demonstrate when there's behaviour that's not acceptable, it gets clamped down on pretty quickly. So I think we're at a point now where we're doing not everything we can, because you can always be better, but we're doing as much as we can to try and make the stadium as safe and welcome for all on the match day. we're now doing a lot of work about how do we integrate Edgbaston more into the community, because if you think we're a 5-acre site right on the edge of the city with brilliant facilities that probably only operates for 20 or 30 days a year in what most people think we are, which is a cricket ground.
Yes.
So that's a heck of a lot of days when the lights aren't turned on and it's sort of sitting there empty, and it feels a real shame to have that sort of space not being used. So particularly through COVID, it opened our eyes a little bit, where I think about 40% of the city were vaccinated at Edgbaston. It was one of the largest vaccine centres in the city. We had one of the first drive-through testing centres. So we've sort of seen how you can use our bricks and mortar to help the city, but we've also, in a few weeks' time, we've got Eid prayer. So there'll be 2,000 to 3,000 people celebrating the end of Ramadan at the stadium. And again, that's brilliant, because it just opens up the facility and it makes it feel different for people and opens up to different uses. And we did that last year for the first time, and that worked brilliantly well. We've got a Vaisakhi festival with Preet Gill, the MP, in a couple of weeks' time as well, which is the first time that we've done that. So I think we're now trying to just think about how do we use Edgbaston more as part of the community day to day, so that it feels like it is a place that's safe and welcoming for all. And then on a match day, you make it as safe and welcoming as possible for all. We've also thought about the players, because there's some amazing cricket talent around Birmingham. If you look at some of the communities around the city, we've got some brilliant cricket clubs, but there's also some brilliant players, and we've got to make sure that we're as open and inclusive as possible for all of the young men and the young women that would like to play professional cricket, that we can find them. And if you think the traditional routes to get into cricket are you either go to the right school or you go to the right cricket club. Yeah. Both of those are relatively exclusive routes. So over the last 12 months, we've worked really hard introducing a new open trial system. So anybody now, as long as they've got access to a smartphone, they can go onto the website and we tell people how to film the young man or the young woman that's playing and either bowling or batting. And then that footage is submitted through WhatsApp to the club. And then we've got three coaches that sit and look at every piece of footage. And then out of those three coaches, they come up with a view to go, yeah, we think we should actually get that young man, that young woman into the venue to have a look at them properly. And then what we do from there is we ask them to come to 3 training sessions. Because again, historically, what would happen is you'd be asked to come along to 1 session in the indoor cricket centre. But if you just happen to have a bad day and you're out first ball, or the coach wasn't walking past you as you bowled, it made it a bit of a lottery. So again, coming in for 3 sessions gives you a better chance of being spotted. So what we're trying to do now is make sure, as I say, anyone that's got a smartphone has got a chance of getting into the Warwickshire age groups. And we've got about 450 to 500 young boys, young girls from the age of 11 to 16 in that pathway. So I think we're doing more and more now to make the pathway more inclusive. We've reduced the costs tremendously of being part of that pathway, because you used to have to pay to come to training in the summer, come to training in the winter. You used to have to pay for all of the gear. And cricket's not cheap because you need lots of bats and hats and gloves and all sorts of things. So we've significantly reduced the cost now. So I think we're at a point where between sort of 50 and 80% of our age groups from 11 to 16 come from people from predominantly local British, Pakistani and British Indian communities. So our challenge now is how do we develop that young talent, because it's definitely there, and turn them into professional men's or women's cricketers in 3, 4, 5 years' time. So a bit of a long answer to your question there, apologies.
No,
but
it's brilliant.
It's a key part of our strategy now. It's not just about, I joined 3 years ago, and one of the things that someone said to me when I joined was, Edgbaston's just like this bloody big spaceship. It lands about a dozen times a year, causes havoc on the roads, loads of grief everywhere, and then it floats off again and then disappears and no one hears from it. And that just felt really wrong. So all the work we're doing now is trying to make sure that Edgbaston as a stadium feels properly integrated in to the areas around the stadium, and that we're creating as many opportunities as possible for talent both on the field and off the field to sort of develop their careers. We're doing a lot of work now with Senmore College, trying to do cricket apprenticeships. We're working with Compass, one of the world's largest hospitality businesses, to create a learning and development centre at Edgbaston. We adopted the real living wage, and we try to recruit as much as possible from within a mile radius of Edgbaston. Because on a major match day, we can have between 1,000 and 1,200 people working on the site. And there's about 150 to 200 people permanently working at the stadium. So if I can give 1,000 people a chance to work and pay them a proper wage, then that feels like you're doing the right thing.
Yeah.
And if through that you can work with Compass to find the next generation of supervisors, bar managers, event managers, then we're starting to develop proper careers for local people as well.
Oh, yeah, definitely. I think it's allowing people choices, isn't it? You know, and that stems from the new smart technology for the children, but also for the adults with these, you know, these different pathways of jobs and careers. What you're allowing is choices within the region. And I think going back to your point on the developments that you've made within the stadium itself, I think for, you know, the immediate region, but also as part of the West Midlands, to have that kind of that note, you know, we're not tolerating X, Y, and Z. Actually, to be known for that creates such a wider impact, you know, socially, that it, you know, creates a safe environment, and it just allows more people to be into the sport of cricket. Do you think that with the women's cricket, it's going to have a bit of a kind of a social following, as did the women's football? Do you think that's going to have a bit of a positive?
Absolutely, definitely. I mean, it'll help promote women's sport generally, which is good. It'll help develop a more balanced audience in cricket, which is good. And it's really exciting cricket as well. If you look at the 100, we play the men's and women's 100 games back to back. So you have the women's Phoenix team and the men's Phoenix team. And we were getting probably between sort of 8 to 10,000 people coming in for the women's game and then staying on for the men's game. Now that's really impressive.
Yeah.
So, and what people say is the quality of the women's cricket is just as good as the men's. The excitement is just as good. But if you're a young woman sitting in the crowd, an 8, 9, 10-year-old girl sitting in the crowd going, well, why can't I do that? Surely that's exactly the right thing that we should be doing, because there should be the same opportunity for that young girl as there is for that young boy to become a professional sports person. And I think that's been the biggest benefit of women's sport generally over the last 3 or 4 years. And it's great because Edgbaston back in the 70s, before I joined Edgbaston, I worked at Wolves back in the day, and Rachel Hayo-Flint was there, and she was a real protagonist for women's cricket and women's sport, and we hosted at Edgbaston back in the 70s the first ever Women's World Cup. So it's great to be at the forefront again of moving on. It's just a shame that it's taken so long to get where we've got to, but at least now we're going in the right direction. And we've got the Central Sparks, which is the sort of affiliated women's team for the Birmingham Bears, and then we've got the Birmingham Phoenix playing the women's 100 game. I think women's professional cricket has come a long way, and we've got one of the rising stars, Izzy Wong, who's from Birmingham. So Izzy's just come back from the women's IPL, so she was a trailblazer there. She actually was in the team that won the women's IPL. So that's something you can never take away from her, is that she was the inaugural winner of the women's IPL, which is one of the richest and most lucrative sports tournaments in the world. It sort of rubs shoulders with the NFL and Formula One and Premier League football. So I'm really proud of that Edgbaston, Warwickshire, helped nurture Izzy and got her to a point where she's now been able to unleash her potential. And I'm just really pleased that the cricketing world has got to a point where women can have those sorts of opportunities to travel the world, earn the same sort of money as the men do, have the same sort of profile that the men do.
And if children in the stands are still having these conversations about it not being maybe as easy as what it should be, the fact that Edgbaston as a ground itself help pushing that narrative is something in itself to be proud of, because it's actually helping break these kind of cycles and moulds. So
it's some cultural breakdown as well, because we had a young one last year, a brilliant cricketer, played for the Birmingham Phoenix, but she wore the hijab. She was the first ever professional player to play in the hijab. And again, that helps break down stereotypes about this sport isn't for me, because a young girl can see someone who wears the hijab going, actually, well, if she can do it, why can't I? And we started selling Birmingham Phoenix hijabs in the store. We only sold them for £1, I think, Daft, because it wasn't about making money out of them. It was actually about saying, well, actually,
raising that awareness.
If she can wear it, I should be proud wearing it as well. And actually, you know what? It's not just about watching her wear it on the cricket field. If it's okay for her to do it here, it's okay for me to go into the gym at school with it on, and it's okay for me to play football, or it's okay to do other things. So I think that's where we've all got to take more responsibility in professional sport to do what I talked about when we started, really, which is using the power of sport as a platform to help break down some of these barriers and try and get anybody from any walk of life to have the confidence to go and do whatever it is they want to do, whether it be in sport or in sort of corporate life or academic life. So that's the thing we're trying to think quite a lot about now is how do we still do what we've always done, which is think about elite cricket, but then we have to now think about so much more. How do we make that relevant for the communities that we serve?
Yeah.
And how do we create those opportunities for people to achieve their potential? So yeah, lots to get your head around.
Yeah, and it's interesting because you were talking earlier about how, as a stadium, you have to especially from COVID, diversify so much and go, well, what else can we do if there's no cricket? You know, I've personally been to Edgbaston through sport, through events and corporate purpose. So actually, you know, it is a multifaceted, you know, kind of business in itself, isn't it? Do you find that that's again another goal to kind of create multiple revenue streams to keep that, you know, that kind of side of the business going?
Absolutely. I mean, where we're at now is we talk about Edgbaston as this sort of 5-acre campus site on the outskirts of Birmingham. And if you think we've got the Mac and Cannon Hill Park on one side of us, and then you've got sort of Sparkbrook, Borsall Heath on the other. So how can we act as that catalyst for bringing all of that together? So we've invested significantly in the stadium, but also we've built now one of the largest public squares, the piazza outside the main entrance, which is opposite the Aldi and the Mac, if you know Edgbaston. That's now as big as Centenary Square or Chamberlain Square. So we're just thinking now, working with Calthorpe Estates and the City Council and also the Mac about what can we use that space for. So we had an Asian film festival there last summer. It was only a small event, but could we do more around sort of food, dance, theatre, different cultural events on that space? Could we have fun fairs there? Could we have Diwali festivals there? We already have a fireworks display. Can we make that into something bigger and better? So we're thinking about how we use that public realm space. But equally, how do you make it on a Sunday afternoon? You can have a wander down from Edgbaston or Moseley, or wander down from Sparkbrook or Borsall Heath and get a coffee or a cake and sit and watch something or do something that's interesting. And then you might have a wander then through to Cannon Hill Park or nip through to the Mac, and you've created that new almost part of town. So we've built that piazza, and over the next year or two we'll think about how we bring that to life. There's also over 300 buy-to-rent flats that have been built in a partnership that we developed with a company called Patrizia. So the external of those will be finished for the Ashes. If you drive past Edgbaston, you'll have seen it going up over the last year or two. So that's nearly finished now from the exterior, and underneath it there's a series of retail units. So we're just looking about whether we should operate some of those retail units. We've got a joint venture with Compass who help us with all of our catering. So we're just thinking about whether we should open some kind of cafe, bar, workspace area as one of those retail units, and we'll operate that. We're also looking at redeveloping the sort of family stand to the left of the main pavilion, and looking at whether we incorporate a hotel. So there's some very early conversations going on around a sort of 150 plus bed hotel going into the stadium, and then a new stand being built that will wrap around the main pavilion. Which again would have some sort of food and beverage in it, coffee shop kind of feel. And then, as I mentioned, we're looking at creating this learning and development centre, so that there's a live conversation with Compass about training centres for people to have careers in hospitality. And there's conversations with a couple of companies about doing a similar thing to help promote digital skills. And then unfortunately we got knocked back in the Levelling Up funding, which I think most of the city did, which is unfortunate. But we've got plans to build a community centre at Edgbaston, as well as take over Quinton Police Station and run outreach community courses in there. So again, that was about trying to spread the use of the venue. And then we've got our core conference and exhibition space, the banqueting hall and the various suites that we've got at Edgbaston, which really trade well. And again, we've tried to build up things like the sort of, particularly the Asian wedding market over the last 12, 18 months, to try to help with that diversity message, as well as keep hosting the sort of conferences and dinners and banquets that we've historically done. So if in 2 years, 3 years time you said to me, what are you the chief executive of, hopefully I'll be able to say a cricket club that's also a hotel, that's also got retail, F&B retail, that's also a conference and exhibition centre, that's also got some training facilities and a community centre there. So we're trying to fit all that into the 5 acres is interesting, but that's the ambition of what we've got. And half of that is about making the revenue to support the cricket, but the other half is about turning that space into something that the city and the communities that live around it can be really proud of.
Yeah, and I think when we think of the stadium itself and the cricket club, I think actually it is so understated, because you know, not only pushing the sporting message with cricket and with, you know, young children, but actually trying to create more and more, you know, investment and revenue for the region itself, more and more jobs, more and more skills. There's a lot more to it than maybe people may think, you know, kind of especially before listening to this conversation, for sure. And how is it, because you've come from a fairly successful sporting background, so how has it been since, I suppose, taking over?
It was a weird one, because I joined in COVID, so I turned up on my first day at Edgbaston, there's nobody there, and
Lights
there's no
off.
crowd. So it's this is easy. No one to manage and no one to look after. I can handle this. And then slowly we worked our way through that with the support of people like the City Council and the UCB, essentially. And then it's been slowly building the business back up again. Edgbaston has always been a really solid cricket club with a really good reputation for delivering international cricket events. So I've been fortunate, really. I haven't had to work on that piece. What I've had to do is build on how do we bring the more community side of things into play, and how do we make Edgbaston feel like it is more integrated in the city. And as I say, we're on a journey with that. I don't think that sort of thing ever ends, but it's been an interesting three years. I look back and go, I've worked at Wolverhampton Wanderers, at Rangers, at Wasps, at different sports clubs, and I was saying this the other day, when I first started working in sport, in football, all you really had to worry about was, have you sold 30, 40,000 tickets on a Saturday afternoon, and either buying a beer and a shirt, and that was it. Now you're thinking about the sort of ESG platforms. So how do we promote sustainability? How do we make sure that it's not just full of people, but it's a diverse community, and that we're looking after all those different communities? What are we doing outside of the sport to make sure that we're using the venue 7 days a week by developing that multi-campus perspective? The layers that have gone on top of the job in recent years have been really interesting. I won't lie, they've been challenging at times, because how you grapple with some of that stuff is quite difficult, but I think that's what's kept the job fresh for me and kept it quite interesting, is that the world's evolved so much, and so much for the better as well. I think it is much better now than it was when I first worked in sport, because we now think of these different things, and I think we've now accepted our responsibility, not just as part of the community, but almost as platforms that can elevate issues within the community. And you look at what Aston Villa are doing with their redevelopment and what they're doing with their community work. I think you're starting to see now professional sport moving into a very different era, where they still have to generate as much money as they ever have done, if not more. But as with that generation of revenue comes a responsibility to make sure that you're absolutely not just saying that you'll do the right things, but you're seen to do the right things. In all the areas that we've talked about, whether it be about social mobility, whether it be about employment, whether it be about community integration, whether it be about creating opportunities, equal opportunities. I think that's a very different lens to professional sport than the one I first experienced when I started back in the day, but I think it makes it a lot more interesting.
Yeah, definitely. Well, we're certainly really lucky to have, I think, such a broad range of diverse talent from the sport itself, but also to have such a successful and exciting stadium and business as well. So thank you for joining us today.
Pleasure.
It's been really, really interesting.
That's good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
The former Typhoo Tea Factory in Digbeth is to be the new home for the BBC in Birmingham, after plans for development were given the go-ahead. Developer Stoford said the new 84,000 square foot centre, to be known as the Tea Factory, represents the first phase of a wider master plan for the surrounding area. Law firm Gately has expanded its construction team with the appointment of Michael Smith as a partner at its Birmingham office. Michael, pictured here with Gately partner Emlyn Hudson, joins the team from Stafford-based ORJ Law, where he was a partner for 15 years. The Manufacturing Technology Centre and global platform How to Robot have announced a partnership aimed at increasing the adoption of robots among manufacturing and warehouse businesses in the UK. The collaboration looks to connect businesses with the right automation solutions and suppliers.
Hi there, so welcome to this edition of the Joel Blake Business Show. My name is Joel Blake and I'm your host, and today we're going to be talking about the Midland startup culture. In recent years, many businesses have been challenged by the pandemic, the global crisis, energy crisis, and everything else that they go through on a day-to-day basis. Yet we are still revered as a great startup region. But how many startups actually become scale-ups, become the high-growth businesses that can truly contribute to the growth of the region? So today we're going to be exploring that and more with two exciting, wonderful, amazing guests and leaders who are at the heart of the business ecosystem here in the region. So first I'd like to introduce Daniel. Daniel Evans is the CEO of Beck. And we have Makalonge, CEO of the Eco Group. Thank you, gents. Thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having us.
Startups, business, entrepreneurship. You know, we've all been in this area for a long period of time. But it's easy to say that we're a great region, right? In terms of this energy that we have for startups, the diversity that we have, the youth culture. But are startups really getting the support that they need? And Daniel, I'd like to just start with you because I know with Beck, you've been on this journey for such a long time in helping startups in the region. But do tell us a little bit about Beck, and then just I'd like to get your views on, do you actually think startups are getting the support that they truly need?
I mean, where to start? It's such a big question, isn't it? So to give you just that little context on Beck, so we are an independent, not-for-profit social enterprise set up in early 2019 to support startups, moving on to then support, scaling businesses as well. So we've spent, a bit of time as one of the newer kids on the block, I guess, compared to a lot of the organisations in the city, but supporting those startups and early stage businesses. As you said, there's a lot of good things going on. There's a lot of opportunity, a lot of potential, but there's also a lot of issues that really prevent those startups from progressing beyond there. And I think for us, it's been trying to unpick some of those challenges, trying to find ways to work with other organisations to provide the right support that's relevant for the challenges of building a business in 2023.
Fantastic. And we're going to get into some of those challenges because I think, we know you've been doing some great work in that area and really looking at some of those challenges head on. But I think one of the biggest challenges that we have is certainly making sure there's equal support, which brings me really nicely onto the Eco Group. Tell us a bit, Mac, about the Eco Group, what you do, and again, what do you think are some of those early kind of challenges that you're seeing?
Yeah, so essentially the Eco Group is a diversity and inclusion consultancy. We're data-driven at our heart. We set up in 2018, really to provide businesses with the tools and support that they need to go on that diversity and inclusion journey. One of the things that we noticed in the early days is that data was absent from most conversations around diversity and inclusion, and we felt that that was a starting point to ensure that A, organisations know where to aim their efforts, and B, to be able to measure success over a long term. I think that's really key to the conversation in terms of getting the right levels of support that businesses need. You really need to understand where that support needs to be directed, what kind of support, what level of support, and also being conscious of how that support changes over time. I think, as Daniel said, there's a lot that goes into the startup kind of narrative. As you scale, your challenges evolve as well. So you have to be switched on to what those challenges are at any given time in your journey. And I think even internally, from an Equal Group perspective, we've been on that journey from startup to scale up, and we're very much in that scale up dynamic now, and the support that we need now is completely different to the support we needed in the early days.
And I think that's a really great point because there's this evolutionary process for startups, and I think, with your work, Daniel, and what your team does in terms of really capturing those early ideas, but then also helping those existing businesses to get to that next level. And then the importance of data and information to make sure that journey is consistent and sustainable and managed I think is really important. I mean, just some early stats that we pulled up, Companies House and Honest Data is saying that there were just under 40,000 new businesses started in our region in 2022, which is up 7.9% since 2021. So, that's a good thing, right? Versus a dissolution of businesses at just over 27,000. So more businesses being started and being dissolved in the region. And Birmingham is the highest number of businesses in the region, with just over 18,000, compared to, I think, Coventry and Sandbar were the two regional areas that follow. But we still have this historic view that many businesses are not here 2 years, 3 years plus in the region. And I guess, Daniel, in terms of some of the work with Beck, what are the top 2 or 3 maybe challenges that you've seen in Beck, and what has your organisation been doing to try and support some of that?
I think for us, there's been a variety of things. I think the numbers, as you said, are positive, that there's a lot of startups that come through, but it's what happens next. Is, you know, one of us could jump onto Company's House, pay our £12 fee, register the company in you know, a couple of hours, and that will count towards those figures.
Yeah.
We haven't done anything, we've not traded, we've not made any money, but we're adding to that positive statistic. So really it's thinking, as you said, about what next in terms of where these businesses go and what they do. I think two big challenges for us that we've seen, number one, and you know, everywhere will say this, is around finance and that access to that early stage finance. And I think the second one is from a skills perspective, but a skills perspective in terms of those people who really understand how to build and scale tech businesses. It's something that we perhaps are lacking a little bit in this region. There's those people that they've been there, they've done it, they've built and scaled businesses all the way through to IPO or acquisition, and having them be able to input into the ecosystem.
So I saw you nodding there, Mac, in terms of tech business. Have you got any views on that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that the knowledge point is key. I think, you know, as you said, anyone can kind of go on Company's House, set up a business, but how do you get your first contract? How do you make your first profit? How do you transition from being a one-person band to, you know, 10, 20, 50, 100 employees? I think that trajectory is something that we don't necessarily have embedded in terms of what does it take, specifically in this region, to do business, to continue to maintain a Midlands presence, to continue to exploit the opportunities. And there's a key word that keeps coming up time and time again, it's potential. And potential is essentially quite meaningless unless it's realised. And I think we need to really think about the infrastructure across the Midlands to make sure that we're helping people to realise that potential.
Why do you think there is some of those infrastructure challenges? I mean to both of you, but you know, just as you brought up the point, because you just flagged in my head that that's not a new thing. The infrastructure challenges seem to have been a long-term issue, but
yeah,
just
so there's a couple of different points. I think firstly, we need to realise that the Midlands is somewhat behind places like London when it comes to this conversation around diversity and inclusion specifically, but building that ecosystem more generally. I think there's still some way to go to move for people from just talking about the issues to actually being brave and taking a step out and putting in place some of those resources that are needed. This is a very nuanced area, and you need to be really embedded and committed to challenging some of the status quo, and that status quo is around how business has been done traditionally, breaking things up, changing things. So when we talk about diverse supply chains, when we talk about positive action, these are things that organisations really need to be equipped to go on that journey. And you have to realise it's a long-term journey. This isn't stuff that changes just because you make a statement or you make a pledge. Yeah. This is stuff that needs to be done continuously, and that's where we kind of fit in terms of data. I guess interestingly, from our perspective, obviously we are a B2B organisation. We support companies on that journey. But a lot of our work prior to the last 2 years had been in London, had been in Yorkshire, had been everywhere else apart from the Midlands. And it's only that recently we've started to get a little bit more traction in the Midlands, which kind of shows you where people are in that conversation.
That's very, very interesting. How about yourself?
Yeah, I think there's a lot there that resonates with me. I think the point at the end around not necessarily having the work in Birmingham coming back, that's something that we've experienced as well, actually, where you know, we've been doing some big projects for organisations outside the region. Almost, I think, and it will come back to these structural issues where almost the same faces have delivered support for a very long time in the same way that hasn't really changed. The funding has allowed them just to keep going on and make sure, okay, tick the box because we've delivered our 12 hours of support. Okay, great. What does that actually do? How does that actually benefit the business? Delivered 12 hours, that program's been successful. It's new ideas, it's new ways of thinking, it's about new people and people that haven't had that opportunity to deliver the support. We've seen now these organisations coming through where actually they're able to do some fantastic stuff. The people with the money, the people with the pots and decision makers need to trust those organisations to do that.
That's a really, really valid point. And at the risk of being controversial, I guess, and I'll sod it. At the end of the day, if you look at historically over the last 20 years, particularly in this region, it has been the same faces, it has been the same influencers, not just holding the purse strings, but holding the policy and strategic and influencing purse strings, if you like, as a metaphor. And what you then tend to get is a sense of unconscious bias, or indeed form of conscious bias in the way that people work because of the level of control. But as you say, there was almost a new guard coming through now where the innovation, the ideas, the thought processes, the networks and the access is now forcing, dare I say, the old guard to think differently about their approaches. And I guess, you know, Mac, with your work in D&I exclusively, this merging of diversity, I guess with the youth as well, but the merge of diversity with business support, is it really working?
There's kind of a quick answer and a kind of longer answer. The quick answer is no, it's not working. Okay. The longer kind of more detailed explanation to that is that we really need to look at why it's not working. I think, you know, you challenge it there in terms of the same old faces, same old conversations, same old decisions, and really you have to get under the kind of under the skin of it a little bit to understand that actually when we talk about data, for example, we're talking about both qualitative and qualitative. A lot of that qualitative data is informed by communities, informed by having conversations with people, really understanding what it is that they need, what it is that they're not currently getting, how they're not being served. And I think when you start to realise some of the hows, then you can be more equipped to implement things that are actually going to change. You know, it's not a case of ticking boxes and saying, right, we've done this, we've done that, we've done that. You actually need to look outside of that and kind of take a counterintuitive approach to say, what haven't we done? What haven't we tried? Who's not getting their voice heard? Who's not at the table when these decisions are being made? But fundamentally, to me, it comes down to leadership. And I think we need to really question, what does inclusive leadership look like? Who are those voices that are willing to stand up and not just recognise the issue, but actually do something about it? Those are two very different skill sets. I think, you know, I don't want to talk too heavily about politics, but looking at things politically, it's easy to stand up and say, yes, this is a problem and the data says X, Y, and Z. It's a lot harder to get embedded into communities and say, what do you want? You know, these are the challenges, this is the data that we've seen, this is the disparities that we're trying to solve. How should we go about that? And it kind of involves people giving up that power to a certain extent to say, actually, I'm going to use this opportunity to invite people that haven't traditionally had a voice into this conversation, understand what it is that they need, and then be committed to long term to change that.
So this is about inclusive leadership that drives support for all, rather than being a sense of this is how it is, conform or not. It's about having inclusive leadership that enables the conversation to get much more equal, much more diverse in terms of youth, gender, race, disability, all the different characteristics that we often talk about. Very interesting. I think the other challenge though is that it's a human nature to want to hold on to something that you've had for so long, right? And I would say that entrepreneurs are really breaking that mold, particularly in some of the newer sectors, as you say, like tech. You know, the green agenda is certainly a huge agenda at the moment as well from a sustainability point of view. Arguably, millennials are coming through with more social values, so therefore that's changing the way in which business is being looked at. And obviously ESG is a massive area. But I think one thing you mentioned earlier, Dan, which is always consistent, is access to finance, right? Because you can have the greatest idea, you can even get the support that you need to get started, even to get into the early growth phase. But once you want to really scale up, you need access to finance. And I would say traditionally, that's been an issue. Arguably, it might still be an issue in the future. But Mac, I know that you're involved in a lot of different initiatives around access to finance in particular, but is there any one that you're currently looking at or working on that you think helps to kind of look at what support is available in the region?
Yeah, so recently been doing a lot of work with Lloyds Bank. So I'm part of the Black Business Advisory Committee, essentially looking at black businesses, understanding what support they need. There's a wealth of support for startup organisations, and you know, Dan, you mentioned that typically that has been the focus from an infrastructure perspective. With Lloyds, we're looking at things slightly different, specifically for the region, so West Midlands, Birmingham centric, to say what is it that organisations need when they get to that £1 million revenue perspective. You know, that in itself is a challenge, making sure that you're able and equipped to go from 1 million to 2 million to 10 million to 100 million, whatever that journey looks like. The challenges are a lot more complex, a lot more nuanced in terms of the interventions and support that you need as a business. So it's really about addressing that. Access to finance is absolutely one of the things that we're looking at. So understanding that there's a different financing requirement when you hit that £1 million revenue stage, making sure that organisations know what that could potentially look like. It's not necessarily going to be one route to finance. There's different options in terms of overdraft, in terms of loans, in terms of credit facilities, but just breaking that down for organisations to understand that the finance that they have access to meets the needs of kind of the problems that they're facing, challenges they're facing.
And I'll give kudos to Lloyds, and I will give kudos to some of the other banks as well. You know, we had NatWest in the previous show. They've got a great acceleration program. I know Barclays is doing a lot of great work as well. So it's great to see that large organisations are actually coming down to a grassroots level to really support that growth of entrepreneurs and startups in the region, which is brilliant to see. And I guess, Dan, in terms of the wider entrepreneurship journey, in terms of not just, I guess, lending finance, but maybe, you know, investment finance, various different other levels of finance. What are you seeing for startups in the region at the moment?
I think the problem in this space is that those kind of early checks, those first few checks, we've got some good support at that kind of more scaling point where, you know, the likes of Midven and Mercia, also funds outside of the region who will invest here. If the business is right, they will invest here. Where if you're turning over 6 figures, you know, the conversation's there and they can get involved. I think the big challenge here, almost 2 parts. One is businesses' expectations around how they get that finance. We unfortunately see a lot of people who come and say, I've got a great idea, this is what I'm going to do, I just need somebody to write me a cheque for £200,000. It's like, it's not going to work, is it? You know, you need to have something in place. So really setting that expectation around what you need to do to get that finance. On the other hand, I think the real broken problem with our kind of finance within this region is within the angel space. Is we have, well, a lack of angels, but we don't have a lack of high net worth individuals. There's a lot of money in this region. You only need to drive through Little Aston or Edgbaston, somewhere like that, and see a lot of wealth. That wealth isn't necessarily coming out into the startup community. Maybe, again, a lack of education, that people would put money into property, put money into other things, but wouldn't necessarily think about that. We have one angel network, which I don't think is enough. You know, for a healthy, competitive market, you need more than one. I think sometimes it gets a little bit ignored because people think, oh, we have one, that's fine. You know, if you go to another city, it's common they'll have 3 or 4.
Agreed. No, sorry to cut you, but I know I was just thinking about some work I've been doing down south again, out of the region, but exactly that. The ecosystem is such an integrated ecosystem because there's a lot of people all working towards the same purpose and agenda, whereas we're kind of scarce in the Midlands. But I think any business needs to get to a point where they are attractive to finance. And I think that's where we have a huge gap in our region, because a lot of that support, as you say, from a diverse perspective, a youth perspective, any perspective really, it's how do you get to that first inflection point, and often it is that 6-figure, you know, unless you're in the traditional sectors, I would say, you know, where people feel more comfortable, maybe manufacturing or engineering because of our history in the region. But that inflection point is really important.
Yeah, no, I was going to say, sorry, I think there's an interesting dynamic here in terms of the UK-wide narrative, and I think for a long time we've been very London-centric, so it's been, unless the startup is happening in London or unless there's a buzz around it in London, we kind of ignore it, and I think the region has to do more, and looking at kind of the infrastructure, looking at the central resources that we have to do more to do a better job of showcasing the talent that's in the region, the businesses that are in the region, and essentially build a platform for ourselves. And I don't think we've done enough from a PR perspective, if you want to put it in those terms, to say the Midlands is the place to do business. And I think from my perspective, it absolutely is, and it has a lot of potential, but we need to really look at what do we need in place to realise that potential.
I think as much as it might sound almost negative to a degree, I think what I've heard in our conversation is a lot of positive opportunities actually, because as you just said there, brand Midlands, you know, the Commonwealth Games recently put us again on a real global platform. And I know with Beck, you've been doing some stuff with Canada, for example, in terms of the work there. We've got the people. What we don't have is enough of an infrastructure to support those two things. We don't have enough support to promote that brand, and we don't have enough of the support for all people to then really release the potential, as you said earlier, Mac, that we all have. I think what really worries me, though, if I'll be honest, is that this is not a conversation that's not been had before. So what's really going to change? What's really going to move the dial? If there was a magic wand that we could all kind of cast right now, what do you think would really need to change to move the dial, notwithstanding all that we said? So, Daniel, what do you think? If you had this really wand or this genie,
get rid of it all. Do you know what? We're at the point where that opportunity is here. So obviously a lot of the business support and that sort of thing has been European funded for a long time. We've got this big shift now where we've come away from that. We've got UK Shared Prosperity, the UK replacement for that. For me, this was going to be a big opportunity to do something different, to try something new, to take risks, to do that. So far, that doesn't feel like that's been the case. I think there's a lot of worry and concern that we're just going to fund the same old stuff, but we've got less money, so actually we're going to under-resource what was average anyway. I've seen a few other regions where they've taken a lot more of a collaborative approach to saying, let's try new ideas, let's invite people around the table who haven't had this opportunity before. I don't see that happening here, and I think for me that would be the big thing, is giving that new ideas, a point that we've made several times, but I think a really good example for me is what Oyen and her team at the Neo Enterprise Group have done. You know, somebody that potentially wouldn't have had the opportunity to get funding before. They had funding through the Command Authority to run boot camps. They've done some remarkable work now. That organisation's turning over 7 figures, which in the enterprise space is very difficult to do. It's difficult to get to that stage.
So this sense of inclusive collaboration with new ideas, new ways of thinking, bringing kind of the infrastructure together with that innovative thoughts and mind processes.
Yeah, building it right from the start. You know, every time that we've approached a programme, I think our strength has really been everybody in the team, all the mentors involved are entrepreneurs. We come at this from the side of who we're trying to support. So really building back and thinking, right, well, if we're starting from a blank kind of canvas, what do we need to do to support these entrepreneurs? Where are they looking to go? What is that journey like, and how do we get them down on that journey? So really reinventing it from the ground up.
Fantastic. Mark?
Yeah, I think just to echo that, I think there's a need for collaboration. So a lot of the businesses in this ecosystem, West Midlands, are facing similar challenges, and I think there's an opportunity there to collaborate and ensure that there's a combined effort towards kind of the same direction. The other point I wanted to make is just about leadership. You know, we've spoken about leadership time and time again. I think there is a need for different approaches, and essentially leaders have to be a little bit brave. And some of the work that we do with leadership teams to make sure that they feel equipped to have those conversations, they feel equipped to do things a little bit differently, because I think that sometimes there's a little bit of a fear from leaders to say, if I step out, if I'm bold, if I'm brave, if I'm ambitious in this space, is it going to come back and kick me in the rear end? And I think just moving away from that fear and looking towards the opportunity to say, actually, there's a chance here that whatever we do that's different could be a real game changer, could set us on a different path, different trajectory. So it's really about having that confidence to step out and really understand what does inclusive leadership look like. We do a lot of programs in London, which is great, but also it's a shame. We need to harness some of that energy here, and the Midlands, I think, is the place that has the most potential in the UK to really set a new direction of travel for what does an inclusive business community really look like.
Just to add on the collaboration point, which is really key. So when we started early 2019, I remember sitting around a round table that was done about the tech community. I felt out of my depth because we're just getting started and all the people here. That was something that's came up, and it's come up time and time again. We don't collaborate enough. We don't collaborate enough in this region. A lot of people now think, oh no, we were working on that and we're doing that. But the collaboration that they'll stick each other's logos on their websites, or they'll say, oh, we've signed this MOU together. Look, we're collaborating, we're chatting, we're working together. It has to be meaningful. It has to be real action, because otherwise it's empty words.
And to that point, again, just looking at the data, looking at your supply chains, understanding where you're spending money, who you're spending money with, and more importantly, who you're not spending money with. And I think there's opportunities here. Once you've got that visibility, once you've got that awareness of who's in the region, who's operating, to then start to dissect that slightly and say, okay, who aren't we working with? What can we do to support businesses in certain sectors or certain regions?
It's amazing. Well, look, you've heard it here. The gents have really explained a lot today in terms of what can be done to help businesses in the region. I think some of the key things that are really coming out is this sense of collaboration, and well, what does it really mean? I think the old rhetoric of getting around the table and having a chat and bringing whoever you want in the room for the sake of it, I think those days are kind of dead. I think we need to really think about who you really want around the table, why you want them around the table, and more importantly, what's going to be done once that table is closed. You know, sick or tired of all this conversation. What we really got to do to move the dial, and you know, the gents have absolutely highlighted the fact that collaboration needs a new definition, but it's driven by a sense of inclusive leadership, a sense of having different people at that decision-making table. So can we please do that? Start having different people around the table so that collectively we all learn, we all grow, we all educate each other, because it's not about any one individual, it is about the region, it is about the UK, it's about everything that we can all do, it's about the communities we're here to serve. And so inclusive leadership, collaboration. I want to say thank you for tuning in. I want to say thank you to Daniel, thank you to Matt, thanks for your giving up your time today and your expertise to really share with our audience what can be done to really make this region pop in the way that we can, and not just make it about potential, not just collaboration, but about growth and success for all. Thank you very much indeed. So thank you for tuning in. Coming up next is a fantastic episode where we're going to be talking to two experienced and established and exceptional business leaders in the region. Two guys who came together with a purpose, who became friends and have done so much for our region. You just have to tune in, all right? Do it now.
Thank you, Joel. That was such a fantastic panel. And from that, we're going to be moving on to what I think is going to be a very fun, entertaining, and insightful conversation with some people that I consider, and many of us consider, Bromley legends. PJ Ellis, Tim Andrews, welcome to the show.
Welcome. Hello.
Thank you.
Awesome. Great to have you guys on the show today. I mean, you guys are one of those people that we all look up to as you know, adopted Bromleys in my case.
Very kind.
You know, you've done so much for the city and you've done so much as well in your individual businesses. But I think one of the things that everybody just wants to find out about is the relationship between you guys. How did that get started?
Well, I thought you wanted it to be fun.
Yeah, that's the fun part.
It's a platonic relationship. We are best buds. But yeah, we've just argued about that actually over coffee. We can't agree actually what that looks like. I think it was a fish finger sandwich at Utopia. He thinks it was a fish supper at San Carlo. I know how the conversation started at least, and then we can get to potentially where we met.
I think we're going to agree that there was fish involved.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
that's
yeah.
what,
There was food.
that's what
There
matters.
was food involved.
Definitely food.
Definitely.
Can't you tell?
So what was the thing that you know got that attraction started? How did that conversation evolve?
Can I pick that one up?
Yeah, go, yeah.
So long story cut short, I'd stumbled across this sort of charity, Harry Moseley. I don't know whether the Help Harry, Help Others charity. In fact, it wasn't even a real charity back then. It was just this poor boy that had a brain tumour. And I followed his journey, and I wanted to do something to help. All of a sudden, I thought I'd do a golf day or something, and it just wasn't going to happen. You know, the response was amazing. The lad passed away, unfortunately, and I didn't know what to do. I was a bit lost, sort of thing, and I just reached out to Facebook, and like Tim has done ever since, you know, pretty selfless in his approach and always willing to help people. He was the only one that put his hand up, really. And he went from there. Literally, I remember him saying, I'll call you tomorrow. Now, our relationship has been pretty defined by this, in that I'm rubbish on the phone. I don't really like taking calls and stuff, whereas Tim's always on the phone. He'll always try and call me, and I've missed his call and stuff. And I remember walking past Wagamama's in Birmingham city centre. I was a lawyer at the time, and this Tim Andrews was going to phone me. And by then, I'd had like 24 hours to look at what he was doing, and he was this big business mogul in Birmingham, and I was really like, wow. And he called me, and I was like really nervous. And I was like, should I take the call? And it's a bit of a sliding doors moment, because I nearly didn't. But I did, and the rest is history. But yeah, we met the next day, but I'll leave that to Tim to tell you where we met, because as I said, we're not entirely too sure ourselves.
Fantastic. And I'd like to hear from you, Tim, in terms of when that post went out and you saw it, what was the thing that originally drew you to it?
Well, it's all about helping others. One thing about Birmingham is there's so many people. you reach out when you need some help. Collaboration is number one, I think.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And so I reached out to Page and I said, well, I'll help you with, I'll donate my boat for a day as a prize, you know, to raise some money. One of the things that the difficult thing about raising money for charity is you need experiences, you need, gone are the days where you have like a signed football shirt, you know, that you need experiences, and I felt that a day on the boat would be a great experience for Brummies, landlocked Brummies, to have a day on the water and go to a nice restaurant. And so I reached out, and the rest is history. I actually got involved in organising the event, which turned out to be actually a big charity gala event at the ICC. We sold out 1,200 people.
That was
I don't think the ICC has ever sold out, actually.
It was amazing.
Maybe a few times since, but it was the first time we'd ever sold out, and we filled the room, and largely because, you know, it's an organisation. It was a cause that was touched many people's hearts, but it was so great to be involved in that. We did it 2 years, and the charity's still going now, which is now a charity. It was
still doing the event as well, I believe.
They're still doing the
Which
event,
is
but the
amazing.
charity itself became a charity when we were involved, and that's got us together as people call us the Fat Ant and Debt.
But he's losing weight at the moment, and I'm finding it.
Yeah, but I'm going to come back into that relationship a bit more. But I think you touched on something that is very important that we need to talk about. That, you know, selfless nature of that represents the culture of Birmingham. I wanted to dig into, and I'd like to hear from both of you on this. What does it mean to be a Brummie? I mean, for a lot of people, you know, there are many different experiences by which they could describe that, you know, but I'd like to hear from you guys. You've touched on that, you know, willingness to help other people, but dig into that a little bit more.
I want to go back, actually, when I was a kid, growing up. We used to go caravan running at weekends, and I used to tell people, oh, I'm from Birmingham, and they go, oh, what's that like to live in? You know, and it was actually a place where I was so fond of it, but actually anybody outside of Birmingham always looked with a slight distaste towards it and questioned why I lived there. And genuinely, well, what's wrong with it, you know? And until this day, and obviously the city has grown in itself, and has become a bit more sexy, and has become a place where people want to live now. But you know, going back to it's the people. It's not the buildings. It's the people. It's the camaraderie, the helpful nature of people. I think that Brummie, you know, there's a reason why the heart was in the Birmingham City Council logo all those years ago. You know, it is the heart of the UK. But actually, there's no bigger hearts, I don't think, than Brummie hearts.
Absolutely, wouldn't agree more.
Yeah, 100%. I can't really expand on that much, other than it was quite interesting when, I'm sure we'll come on to this, but when me and Tim and another chap set Love Brum up, we had a call from the Cabinet Office about 2 years into the journey to say, actually, we think we've been looking at Love Brum and what it does within the communities, etc. I think we could do that across the UK, you know, love London, I think there is a Love Manchester and a Love Cornwall. It's got nothing to do with us. But at that point, it was very much, we were reluctant, if that's the right word, for us to do it. A, because we were doing it voluntarily, we just didn't have the time. But B, it was because we weren't sure, and I don't want to offend any other communities, but we weren't sure what other cities were like. Absolutely. Birmingham is, you know, I've lived in London, and it's very different to Birmingham. I'm not saying it's worse or better. I mean, I do prefer Birmingham, but Birmingham, I see it as a village. Everyone's out there looking out for one another. I think there are pockets of Birmingham that need support, and I think there are people that are doing that. And I think, you know, when we didn't push Cabinet Office back, we just said, look, we're just not ready to do that. But it was driven by the fact that we just feel that Birmingham, certainly I do, that is just slightly different to other cities that I've experienced before.
I had a guy ask me to start up Love Stoke, help him start Love Stoke.
There we go.
No.
But he'll go on and do brilliant things in Stoke, I would imagine, you know. But yeah, Birmingham is just full of brilliant people. I think, you know, there's no denying that actually just through the stuff that we do with Love Brum, it showcases, you know, these brilliant projects that are led by, you know, volunteer led by people that are wanting to make change within the communities that they serve. And they're doing it off their own back. They're doing it in their own time.
Absolutely.
You know, they're doing it at night. You know, and it's just like, wow, the fabric of that. You know, that underpins everything that this city does.
Strong.
It's just amazing, yeah.
And I want to come back to one of the things that Tim said earlier, from my personal experience, because I only came into Birmingham at the start of 2021, interestingly, and you know, coming in, that collaborative spirit, that was the very first thing that jumped at me. Everybody was so willing to introduce you to everybody and help you along and point you to where the resources are. And I think that is such a powerful thing, that collaborative spirit that sits at the very heart of the city. And, you know, it's with every single person that you come across.
Yeah, it's the culture of Birmingham that's been bred into the city, you know, by our past generations is, I think, second to none. I don't think any other city can match it.
Absolutely. So you touched on Love Brum a little bit, and I don't want to presume that everybody that's watching us actually knows what Love Brum is. So I'd like you guys to talk a bit about what Love Brum is, why you started it, the work that it does, and then we go a little bit deeper thereafter.
I think the bit that I said about me growing up, saying I was from Birmingham, that was the sort of the real sort of, I want to show Birmingham I want to show people what Birmingham's all about. And I think it's fair to say when I was growing up, the civic pride wasn't in the city that it is today. And we felt when we got together, this is a few years into our friendship, but we felt that the civic pride piece it wasn't there as it should be. You know, there's all this great stuff that the city's producing and has produced over the years, you know, inventions that have changed our world. But actually, people of Birmingham don't really believe. We're very deprecating in our approach. And I just felt that the best way of reopening up that civic pride piece and building on that is actually focus on the people. And that's what Love Brum does. It, you know, as Pete says, it focuses on all these organisations that are doing great work, and by you know, presenting them to the rest of Birmingham, we can actually present ourselves to the rest of the world. You know, by being proud of where we've come from and proud of what's happening in our city right now. And Love Brum is, you know, one of many organisations on that civic pride piece. But I think, you know, and I'm very proud to be part of that, you know, that growth in our city, and I do believe Love Brum has played a part in that.
Fantastic. And PJ?
I'd have to agree with Tim. I think we started this conversation at a very similar time. I feel that other projects were thinking about having that conversation as well, because not long after we went to the city and asked whether the city wanted something like Love Brum, because it's obviously developed over the years. It wasn't soon after that we saw the likes of I Choose Birmingham, Independent Birmingham, Be Birmingham, all this sort of stuff. So it was this sort of period of renaissance where there was like a revolution around civic pride and people beating their chest around, actually, we're proud to be Birmingham. And it's not necessarily all about the history. It is embedded with some brilliant stories, and you know, you see the standard facts about we've got more canals than Venice and all that, but actually it's about the people and the future of Birmingham as well, not just the legacy that's gone, it's the legacy that we're about to create. And I think that is the stuff that really excited me and Tim and Dave. And it actually was quite interesting because sorry to knock you there. Working out, mate, looking good. I think it was interesting where it came from as well, because Tim had been out running and on a bike ride, correct me if I'm wrong. We did this bike ride actually for that Harry Moseley charity. Tim organised it. We went from Switzerland all the way back to Birmingham, you know, 7 countries in 7 days. I actually did it, can you imagine? Unbelievable. I was good on the flats, no good on the hills.
3 stone ago.
Yeah, 4 stone ago I did it, yeah. But he got talking to another guy, Dave McLean, about this and that. I started talking to my brother-in-law, and he was talking a bit more about, you know, there's got to be a way of better aligning business sort of CSR strategies with community-based projects. Tim was talking about this civic pride stuff. So it actually, you know, a few pints later at Old Contemptibles, this thing was born. It was, you know, it was a marriage of let's celebrate the people behind the projects, let's try and restore this civic pride, let's connect businesses with charities and community groups better than they are at the moment. And all of a sudden this thing happened, which was just, it was just amazing. Absolutely. You know, I still feel really sort of gets me going thinking about that conversation now and all the stuff that's gone on since. I'm very proud
and let's not forget, it's these small charities that often get missed and forgotten.
100%.
You know, we are blessed as a city with some very large, very good charities. But of course, the corporate world, they go to those naturally because they know about it and they've heard about it. But a lot of these large organisations have got like 15 full-time fundraisers, you know.
Absolutely.
Whereas these small organisations, they've not even got a fundraiser on board, you know. They're specialists in the service that they provide, but they don't really understand how to fundraise and that route to the corporate world, you know. So that's where Love Brum is. We're a charity for charities. So.
A charity for charities. I love it.
I like it.
And when you look at how the city has evolved over the years, and even how that civic pride piece of the conversation has evolved compared to what used to be and what is now, what do you say to yourself when you look back?
Interesting.
Yeah. Well, it has evolved over quite a long period of time, and obviously I'm not that old, am I? But it has evolved over during my generation. And I look back as to where we were, that rickety old steel bridge over Digbeth, and look to where we are now as a city. The fabric of a city is completely changed. Just not far from here, with the Paradise and linking up the Brindley Place to Colmore Road. The city centre is something quite special. But all this is all quite fabricated. It's quite underneath that skin. There's a lot of hurt in the city. There's a lot of pain points, and there's a lot of areas where we need more investment. We need, we top so many charts that we shouldn't be topping. In our youth growing up, so there's a lot of pain points in the city. So let's not get carried away that the city's this fantastic. It's hurting in many places, like many other large cities. Let's not forget that. There's no doubt about it. This is still the best city in the world, in my opinion. But let's not get carried away with it. And it needs these organisations and needs organisations like Loughborough in order to raise money. And to give back to society that needs it more.
100%.
Absolutely. Go ahead.
No, I was just, it's almost like, just jumping on what Tim said. I think there is a lot to be done still. Absolutely. I really do think that. But I think the confidence that I have now in the city to address those things that need doing is higher than it was 10 years ago. I think people are popping up little bits of work and projects here and there to address. I mean, Tim's involved with a homeless charity as well called Reconnected that does brilliant things for our homeless community. We've just walked through Pigeon Park, and there's another local charity called Let's Feed Brum that was born out of a church sort of soup kitchen sort of project that was feeding and clothing, is that the word? Hundreds of people it looked like. So I think people are more willing to respond. I think access to grants could be better. I think that there needs to be a piece. I don't want this to become political, but I think the government will start doing more around the third sector, I'd like to think, because they are delivering some very important and vital projects.
Absolutely.
And if we're able to get more projects around funding around capacity or whatever it might be, I think we'd be in a much better place. We still see projects doing things that are amazing, but then just fall away because of lack of support, etc.
Those are very, very important subject matters that you both have touched on around what still needs to be done in the city. So, because on the one hand, we're seeing all this massive development around the city centre and all these global corporations coming to set up shop here. And on the other hand, we still have these challenges. So from the vantage point where you guys sit, I want you to touch a bit on what you think, how we can better bridge the gap between, all of that value that big business brings into the city and the existing challenges that the city still has. And how do we bridge that gap? What more can businesses do?
Well, obviously, Loughborough's trying to bridge that gap. We need to do more. And actually, when you think about what money we do give away, we have so much potential, it's untrue. But obviously, we need more support. It is about connecting the two dots, and Loughborough is already there. It's an existing organisation that just needs more funding to enable to do more work, and I think that's the bit that's missing. Loughborough needs that needs support, needs more financial support from the corporate sector, but actually also government as well. We touch on these organisations that are doing great things, but some of them do fall away. The very sad fact is government doesn't even know about some of these that exist. So Loughborough is trying to put them on the map, give them that platform in order to grow, to shout about what they do. And we just we personally need more support, more financial support to enable us to continue to do that great work that we've started and set out to do. Yeah,
we see sort of projects happen that are doing the things that we've probably already done and are doing, and the projects that are a lot of money are spent pushing pushing the dial, is that the right term, around Birmingham and what Birmingham's all about. But actually, there is already a voice that's happening It already exists with Love Brum. So if we were able to sort of find even more money, we'd be able to do the stuff that I know would suit a lot of people's agenda around legacy. The Commonwealth Games thing is really important. I'm really looking forward to seeing where that money goes, because I think, I mean, it could make a massive difference with the amount of money, the overspend or the underspend or whatever it was. And you know, if Love Brum was able to sort of tap into some of that money, genuinely, as Tim said, we have a long list of brilliant projects in Birmingham that are genuinely producing, you know, or delivering projects that have tangible outcomes within their communities, real physical things that you can see. You know, we just need more money.
Talk about pride. I mean, I was brilliant with pride when the Commonwealth Games was on. It's such an amazing spectacle. Yeah,
we all love that.
Incredible. Amazing spectacle. I was interviewed on BBC actually on when the ladies won the cup final football, and I was on the balcony overlooking the square. And it was such an amazing. Just the city was just splashed with colour. It was so cool, and that's what we want. We want the city to be a bit more like that, you know. But of course, that was not real. You know, he was dressed up for the occasion, you know. But we want to see more of those things come into our city.
Yeah.
And of course, the more good work that people like Love Brum doing, the more likelihood is that we'll get to repeat that.
Fantastic. I do want to touch on, you know, further on the business relationship that you've got. But before we get into that, I do know as well, because both of you are looked at as you know, some of the industry leaders, particularly in the third sector in the region as well. And we might have some of those people running smaller charities and projects and social impact programs that are watching this. If you were to, you know, say a thing or two words of advice in terms of how to make sure that from start you are putting your project in a sustainable path, what would that piece of advice be?
How long have we got?
You've got a minute.
I get asked this a lot, actually, and I'll try and think about what our journey was like. And I think the advice would be, you know, try not to procrastinate. You know, it doesn't really matter what the logo looks like or what the website looks like. If you believe in a project, go and get it done. We've already touched upon it. Ask for help. Don't be scared. I think it was Tim that actually said to me, because I was quite a proud guy, PJ, you've got to ask for help more. You know, and you know, you ask it, you genuinely get it. Generally get it. I think also just look for that sort of skill-based volunteering experience. You know, you might know the project through and through, how to get to those people that you want to serve, but actually you might not know how to file an account with Companies House, or whatever it might be, or HMRC. You might not be able to, I don't know what it might be, do your social media.
There's so many moving parts.
Yeah, we had some real good service patrons at the start of this journey that helped us with PR, social media, accounting, all that sort of stuff. And getting that sort of board that certainly the charity couldn't afford, I hate that term, but you know what I mean, from the start was really powerful for us to really accelerate through the gears.
Fantastic. The support is there, the opportunities are there. Reach out, leverage, and make sure that you be sustainable with charities.
Tim's LinkedIn messages.
I can imagine. Before we go, because we're running out of time, I want to touch on the importance of relationships, particularly in business, in charities. You guys typify, you know, what that could potentially mean, both in terms of the work that you did together and how you encourage other people to reach out. But oftentimes I think we get carried away with the digital, the online, all the fancy stuff, and forget that, you know, it's all about people. So talk to me about the importance of relationship in building successful businesses.
Well, I think one of the main ingredients for that success is authenticity.
Absolutely.
Doing what you say you're going to do. Don't say I'll do something and then not deliver. It's just a little pet hate of mine. You know, people do say, and you do get a lot of people going, I'll do that, and then
never show up.
They're not answering the phone. Yeah, they never show up. So for me, it's all about authenticity. It's about you as a person, and it's one of my biggest drivers. And I think that's, for me, relationships is built on being honest.
Fantastic. PJ?
Trust. I mean, I trust him implicitly. I think we were, without knowing, we were probably perfect combo because we're very different as well. I'm getting more like Tim, I think. You know, when I first met Tim, I was a solicitor. I didn't really know what I wanted to do, but I wanted to be more like Tim. We had a little saying in the house, be more Tim. You know, so he really helped me with my journey, but that journey has been based on trust. You know, we care for one another. And also, I know that he does the things that I can't do, and I'm sure I do the things that he doesn't want to do or can't do. So we work really well. He's the face, I'm the machine at times. And that worked really well at the start because Tim was fundamental in going out and reaching into his network to get us the money that we needed, whilst I was, look, every lawyer just fills the forms in, don't they, and all the rest. So
Great, I love the way the fact he thinks he's the machine.
no, you know what I mean. I meant like the what is it, the monkey in the wheelhouse or something. Yeah. But equally, hard work. There was. I remember when the lottery supported us. Initially, it was like, we're going to give you loads of money because we can't get to the projects that you are getting to on the ground. But actually, after our 6th or 7th meeting, me and Tim turning up, having emailed at 3 a.m. in the morning and stuff like that, they realised that, it wasn't sustainable to continue putting the graft in that we were. And they wanted to give us the money to make it more sustainable so we could invest in infrastructure. So I think, it's a balance of working hard, knowing that you're
having the dream as well.
Having the dream and working towards it, and trusting one another along the way.
Fantastic. I think you couldn't have said it better. That is so important, both on the subject matter of trust and on the subject matter of authenticity. It will bring people together, whether they're suppliers or customers or staff members or board members. It is very important that those ingredients are there because that's what makes for successful businesses. Before I let you go, what does the future of Birmingham look like when you dream?
Wow.
Birmingham City back in the Premier League for one.
Tim's going to be running.
That's a good start. What does it look like?
Tim's CEO of Blues.
Yeah, I'd love to see our football team. And actually, joking apart, our city needs, Manchester. They've got 2 very successful football teams in their city. We need to have the same, and and that brings all sorts of outward investment back into our city. Puts our city on the map, every single week. So for me, that it has to be, that's a dream of mine to get our team, or my team, our team back into the Premier League and to put Birmingham back on the map. And it's the team that carries our city's name at the end of the day.
Absolutely.
No offence to Aston Villa fans.
Go for it, PJ.
I think for me, exactly, I'm with Tim. I want the Blues back in the Premier League. I think it does so much for us. But as a city, I think, personally, I'm hearing more Birmingham accents across the radio and different forms of media. Alison Hammond and, he's championing the way forward for Brummies, which wasn't the case 10 years ago. It just wasn't the case. You'd have to have a northern accent to go into radio and stuff. So I want to see more of that. I want to see more of Birmingham represented across media. And I want to see people coming back. I remember this campaign that me and Tim wanted to do, go on the train station and hand out cups of coffee saying you're going the wrong way when people go into London. The opportunities lie right here, and I want people to start realising that, and I think people do more and more.
I think making Birmingham sexy again is the...
He loves that word, he said that twice already. I love it.
Yeah. We're definitely on the way.
I'm not the one to do that.
But thank you very much, gentlemen, for coming on the show. I think it has been really remarkable. On behalf of everyone watching, the charities, the people that they support, and everyone that has just been inspired by your story like I have. Thank you very much for all that you do for the city.
Thank you. Thanks
for coming on the show. Thank you, everyone, for joining in this session. We're not done yet. We're going to have the news bulletins right after now. And thereafter, Carl is at Unity Trust Bank talking about some of the interesting things that they've been up to. Stay tuned.
Qatar Airways is returning to Birmingham Airport following a 3-year absence. The Doha-based carrier plans to restart daily flights on the Boeing 787 Dreamliner from July the 10th. Nick Barton, the airport's chief executive, said that connectivity from Birmingham to the Middle East is something customers have missed since the airline ceased flying to and from BHX in early 2020. Birmingham-based education provider Services for Education has announced a new partnership with Best Practice Network to deliver teacher training across the city. Kirsty Jones, head of school support at Services for Education, said the partnership would help provide a perfect route into teaching with in-depth school experience and learning from expert teachers and mentors. And accountancy firm BDO has strengthened its Midlands team with a trio of appointments across the business. Martin Hodgkins and Adam Gaunt joined the Digital and Risk Advisory Service team as managers, while Paul Hope has been appointed as a director in the Forensic and Valuation Services team.
So here we are at Unity Trust Bank in Brindley Place, Birmingham, with Josh Beek and Penny Hogan. Now, last month we sat down with them and they gave us a little bit of a teaser of what we would be talking about today, and that's the publication of their annual impact report. We're now in a position to talk about some of the headlines, all the hard work that's been done. You can now share it with people. So Penny, just give us a few of the top lines, the headlines.
Yeah, thank you. So I'm responsible for the production of the annual report and accounts, and it's been a fantastic year from a financial performance perspective. So Unity supports organisations like ourselves who seek to benefit the common good alongside delivering sustainable financial returns to our shareholders. And 2022 was a record year in terms of profitability and also loan book size. Loans advances to customers increased by 16% in the year to 836.6 million. Profit before tax increased 147% to 27.4 million. Net interest margin increased by 104%, reflecting the growth in the loan book, diversification of the loan book, and also the benefit from the increase in the base rate environment.
And when you consider this is the first year back from 2 or 3 years of very unorthodox trading conditions from everyone, that puts everything into real perspective then with that, doesn't it?
Absolutely, and we completely recognise it's very difficult trading conditions for our customers. And with regard to this, we've increased our impairment provision this year by 2.5 million. So our impairment provision now stands at 6.1 million. So very much growth in terms of growth for Unity, but safe growth as well. What
sort of thing would that cover then, the impairment provision? Explain a little bit more about how that works.
Yeah, so our accounting standards ask us to look at a future forward-looking basis. So we're looking into the future in terms of the losses that we may see coming through on our loan book.
And Josh, as head of impacts and sustainability, that's right, isn't it? I mean, talk to me about some of the specialist areas then that you really contributed to in this.
Well, I think, as Penny was saying, with the year we had in 2022, we've been working with a lot of new customers. There's 154 new loans were committed in the year. And so a lot of what I do is I work with our relationship managers who are on the front line with our customers to sort of understand what impact are we supporting our customers to achieve in society. And then also thinking about our own social impacts or sustainability, sort of carbon footprint that we'll create ourselves. So with the new customers coming on board, we committed 224 million new lending, which supports a variety of social initiatives across the UK. So it could be anything from new housing up in Glasgow to supporting new startups for employment in Leeds, all the way to sort of other initiatives across healthcare and recycling initiatives. So that's what we cover in the impact report. And as Penny said, while the loan book has grown, we've also diversified into new sectors, which means we have to keep making sure that we're talking to our customers and understanding what is it they want to achieve and how can our financing help them.
And how important is it to focus on some of the more underprivileged areas as well to help as part of it?
So that's a really interesting question. So with a recent enough census that the UK government has done, we now have more up-to-date understanding of what are the socioeconomic conditions that the communities are in that we're working with. So 43% of our loans that were committed in 2020 last year went to deprived areas across the UK. So that includes areas of Scotland, England, Wales, Northern Ireland. And what we want to make sure we're doing is continue to understand that data to think how can we continue to support those communities and particularly our customers who are based in those communities to deliver the impact they need.
And Penny, presumably when you're reporting figures like this, which are so comprehensively in the black, does that mean that you're generating profits which give you an opportunity to invest even more back into some of these community areas?
Yes, absolutely. So every pound of profit we make goes into growth for future or returns to our shareholders. And our shareholders are a number of them. They are customers as well, so they benefit from the returns that we make.
But people want you to be completely transparent these days, don't they, about how it works, what you do, where you invest, how you decide where to invest, don't they?
Yeah, one of the key principles as part of our reporting is clarity and plain English speaking. So we try and ensure that our reports are as transparent and clear as possible.
We like plain speaking. It helps a lot, doesn't it? Obviously a lot of what we're talking about here so far is how you are investing to help others. How have you supported your own teams here through, we talk at every show so far that we've done on Birmingham Business TV, we've talked about the cost of living crisis, and part of that you've got to focus on your own people, because happy people are more productive people, aren't they?
Yeah, absolutely. The people are Unity's key assets. So this year we've supported our colleagues with 2 pay rises during the year, with particular focus with the colleagues that are the lowest paid as well.
And to add to Penny's point as well, in 2022 we were really excited to launch Unity and Me, which was a employee-led forum where staff and teams can all come together and decide what kind of social initiatives or environmental initiatives we want to do within the bank that sort of support us to foster the culture that we want to have here. So that's everything from coordinating volunteering days, which we had just under sort of 200 days of volunteering across the UK, which our team members all organised, to working with charity partners who we think kind of live and breathe the mission that we also have. So I think as well as Penny said, making sure we're supporting people through the cost of living crisis and making sure everyone can live well and prosper in their work. We also think about the social and environmental agendas that our teams want to have and to promote as a social bank.
I bet that was a fascinating experiment to see whether the kind of ideas that they came to you with were the kind of things that you maybe would have expected them to come to you with.
I mean, particularly from my field, it's great as well, because new people bring fresh ideas and often much better ideas than I would have had, being sort of looking at impact and sustainability through a certain lens. But it's meant we've had everything from picking charity partners such as Fair Share and the Prince's Trust, who again both are very much at the front, the front line of the cost of living crisis, either working with families at risk of destitution or with young people who have struggled with mainstream education and employment opportunities. And the way that the teams have gone through selecting those partners and making sure we can do our most to support and work with those partners, I think is a great thing. So absolutely.
And presumably a lot of those kind of initiatives are helping to tick boxes and targets that the United Nations and various other organisations are setting and wanting responsible businesses to do. Then
yeah, so I think the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals are a great framework for us to think about how do we want to support or deliver on our double bottom line and our social mission. And as you said, that kind of runs through everything we do. So as we come together in Unity and Me, we're thinking about what are the key social outcomes we want to support against SDG 1 of no poverty by 2030 and so on, all the way through to thinking about how some of our customers who specialise in helping early years education, how can we make sure the facilities they have are as great as they can be. That's either by our financing or by our team going along and putting up Christmas lights to help out. So,
and Penny, I mean, the idea of using finance for good, are you finding that this is becoming an increasingly important element, for all your stakeholders?
Absolutely, and across the industry, we'll be seeing more and more banks differentiating themselves with ethical standpoints. However, from an ESG perspective, we are a capital S from a society perspective. So we lead on the social impact.
So we've talked about some of the headline figures, but have you got any particular case studies that maybe highlight exactly how you're working with different kinds of people in different ways?
Yeah, I mean, our impact report is filled with case studies that hopefully bring our social mission to life. But to your point, we kind of cover a variety of sectors, everything from a fantastic housing initiative up in Glasgow in Scotland with New Gorbals, who are making sure we're providing energy efficient homes for people who are moving out of homes that maybe weren't up to the same sort of standard, through to a really interesting hotel based in Leeds called East Street Arts, it's an art-based and cultural hub that's providing tourism growth and jobs in a part of Leeds that needs it. And then also across to initiatives like Revive IT, who for us are a fantastic example of when you're bringing together a socially minded organisation, providing great employment opportunities and run by a young entrepreneur, also tackling an environmental problem by providing a solution for organisations and individuals to responsibly recycle IT equipment and bring it back to life. So thinking about a longer life cycle of the product.
Another thing I flagged up really in the report here that I thought was of interest that people might want to know a bit more about is Unity's partnership with Bbtv, which you haven't really touched on, in creating impact through banking. So what's that all about and how important is that?
Yeah, so we're really proud to be the newest UK member of the Global Alliance for Banking with Values, which is, to your point, GABV.
So I said in the short form because I wasn't sure I was going to get it right.
Exactly, no, it's a good round. So the GABV is a network of ethically aligned banks who all want to ensure that the banking that they're doing is contributing to social and environmental outcomes beyond just their bottom line. So we applied to join in 2022 and joined some of our UK peers, but also it's a network of banks all across Africa, Europe, Asia, the US, and the Americas. And so we all come together, we share lessons around how we're tackling a variety of challenges that banks might be facing and making sure that we're being a responsible lender in supporting customers through their journey on managing their own carbon footprint, or finding the best ways to make sure that we can fully understand the social impact that we are either facilitating or creating as a bank. So it's a fantastic network for us to have joined and learned from others on.
What, Penny, are some of the things that are most important when you pull out some of those headline figures that we talked about at the start? I mean, things like, as written down here, there's the record lending side of it, and how important is it, the proportion of that that's being lent to, like responsible finance providers? And
yes, so it's very important to us. We report against each of the SDGs, and it's important to us in terms of our reason for existing, and our purpose is to deliver social good and serve the common good as well.
You mentioned as well at the start, when we were pulling out the headlines, the double bottom line, as you referred to. Just elaborate on that and explain why that's so important to the business.
Yeah. So what the double bottom line is our commitment to doing good in society. So serving the common good alongside delivering sustainable financial returns to our shareholders. So it's important that we consider both elements alongside each other. And it's not just a marketing strap line either. It's in our articles of association. It's in our DNA.
Yeah, I think it's important because this is not something that you've just decided this year is going to be your strategy, is it? This is what the whole organisation is founded on, isn't it?
Yeah,
so,
yeah, indeed.
Do you think people know enough about that?
It's a great question. So in terms of how we talk about unity, I believe that the literature that we produce in terms of our impact report is really powerful, and hopefully you'll see that in terms of the impact report that we've published alongside our annual report accounts. So many banks are sort of similar size but aren't social impact lenders who don't have that separate document because it really stands us out. Yeah.
So we should say, I mean, you gave a plug, read the impact report. Where can people find it? Well, what happens? How do you, once you've published it and done all the hard work, you obviously want to put it under as many people's sets of eyes as you possibly can. So how do you do that?
So I think one is, if you follow us on LinkedIn, you'll be able to find the impact report on our posts that we're doing through there. And also if you go onto the Unity Trust Bank website, there's a section on impact, and there's also a section for looking at our resources. So you'll find the impact report and obviously our annual report and accounts to understand what we do as a bank. So those are the two best places to start.
So let's park 2022 for a minute then and look ahead to the next 12 months. I mean, for a start, how early do you start compiling all of the information that you're going to need in the report we're going to be maybe sitting down with you this time next year to talk about?
Yeah. So from a financial perspective, it's a continual cycle. So we're continually rebasing, looking at our numbers. However, our long-term strategy, our 5-year plan is clear. So continued in terms of loan growth to deliver and serve the common good. We've exited 2022 in a really strong capital position at 18.3% CET1. So a very good base for the future.
Anything specific for 2023 that is top of the bucket list? Have you got a list of half a dozen key priorities that have got to be ticked off over the next few months then?
So I think on the side of developing how we understand and deliver more sort of social impact and manage our own sort of carbon footprint, we've got quite a few initiatives that are building up. One is, as we've sort of already discussed, we've tried to understand geographically what kind of areas are we providing loans to, and understanding the sort of deprivation that those communities might be facing. But now we're also going to be looking at what are our customers doing, even more sort of granular level, to understand, are they providing services to a particular group of people who have been marginalised historically, and bringing that data together in a more structured way to understand what can our future sort of support provide and make sure we're continuing to push that double bottom line. On the side of sustainability and thinking about our own footprint as a bank and how we can support our customers, we'll be looking to sort of develop a sustainability plan, which again needs to think about that intersection between the social and society and sort of our carbon footprint and our environmental impact. So understanding how can we help our customers to transition in the face of climate change, the risks that they face to their business model and to where they are, But then also thinking about our own contributions and how can we make sure that we fully understand those and take responsibility for those and reduce them, sort of particularly in line with the net zero targets for 2050. So we've got a lot of big initiatives on the impact side, which is quite exciting.
A lot of balls to juggle by the sound of it. So has quite a percentage of the growth then that you've seen in the past 12 months come from you acquiring more perhaps socially conscious customer accounts then? How has a lot of that growth happened?
So it's an interesting question. So I think that everything that we do is already organisations who are socially conscious or socially minded businesses for us. So if we had 154 new loans completed in the year, all of those will be contributing to a sector that pushes social benefit. And similarly on the account side, we have over 1,000 new accounts opened with us who also are businesses or organisations who share our mission and values. We've seen a lot of growth in our, what we call kind of our UN SDG 3, which is the health and well-being sustainable development goal. So we've seen a lot of growth in our support with care homes and facilities are helping people either with end-of-life care, palliative care, or people who have additional needs and need supported housing. Is one sector we've got a lot of growth in, but we're also doing a lot of work with the housing sector, with pharmacies, with education, and with community facilities. So I'd say, again, our portfolio really is made up 100% of organisations who are contributing to and engaged with our mission together. And it's been, to Penny's point, it's been growth across the board there, really.
So how do you then, Penny, how do you align your lending and your policies with things like the UN SDG policy and other policies that that you've got to which change, they're not sort of cast in stone and haven't changed for 20 years. It's a fast evolving area, isn't it, of business?
Yeah, so that's a key activity that Josh is involved in.
I should have asked him.
But yes, so I would say, firstly, we have a very clear, what we would call a negative screening policy. So there are sectors that we won't engage with because they're not really aligned with our priority areas of trying to deliver social benefits. And then when we're looking at certain sectors, we try and understand what is the kind of the best case, impact case that we could be looking for. So if I look at education, you could be looking at people who have additional standards or additional ways of making sure that young people aren't falling out of the best educational pathway they can go into. Or if we're looking at employment practices, well, we just, as a very basic starting point, making sure are they living wage accredited, or are they meeting living wage standards? Are they unionised, and should they be unionised to make sure that staff have a voice as well? So we have a variety of standards that we apply based on the sector we're working with, and also we have to think about what's proportionate for the size of our loan, because we don't want to scare our customers, but at the same time we need to make sure that we're aligned with them and that we can also support their mission. So we draw down what are the goals and the targets that are set out by the Sustainable Development Goals, and then think about what's relevant for the discussions we have with our customers based on their sector and their business model.
And as in your role as financial controller, then you've got to have one ear, certainly at least, on the changing economic landscape in the UK and how confident people are and how people feel about, when the Chancellor stands up and delivers a budget, you have to presumably pick your way through that and say, right, what's this going to mean to us? Is that a significant part of what you do?
Yes, absolutely. Across all elements within our accounts. So both in terms of lending, perhaps more careful decision making and timing decisions about when to invest that our customers are making. So when to draw down on those loans. Also from a deposit side, in terms of our trade unions and the activity that they're engaged in, we have huge sympathy for the activity that trade unions are involved in. And also just very mindful in terms of potential credit losses that may come through as well. So we spend a lot of time just considering what money that we need to put aside for any future potential credit losses as well.
How do you, I don't know which one is best placed to answer this one, but how do you in general feel that people are feeling at the moment, given at the start of this year there was all sorts of scares about just how high inflation might go, and now I think it feels like it might not quite go as high. But do you feel like people are being particularly careful still at the moment?
I think there are some considered decision makings, considered decisions to make. We're still from a from a loan growth perspective, we're still doing very well. But there are more considered decisions being made at the moment, just in terms of timing. Yeah.
But because you've got so many different tentacles to the business, haven't you? There'll always be some which are perfect for a particular moment in time, aren't they?
Yeah, and I think as well, and to Penny's point, there's a difference there's different hats that people have to wear. We do a lot of lending to small businesses, to SMEs. And while someone has to have the hat on around when's the right time to draw down or to think about the loan they currently have or how they want to run their organization, there's also the consumers and the end customers of that organization that we care about. And to your point, this has been a very difficult year with lots of considerations around the cost of living crisis. And then also people are, we've just come out of a global pandemic, that's had a complete change to our psyche. So I think for us, as well as considering how do we support the businesses, and there are organizations who either bank with us or we provide loans to, we also have to think about what's the onward impact for their customers and their communities. And people have to juggle a lot of hats and making decisions of that. So we're always trying to make sure that we're here to help that process.
Excellent. And being right here in the heart of Birmingham in Brindley Place, it's a great place to be, isn't it, as a business? Yeah,
it's fantastic. I mean, there's some really exciting organisations that work very closely with us, but equally we've got a very broad relationship manager network all across the all across the UK. So we're here to serve the wider UK.
Excellent. Well, great to catch up with you. Thank you for your time. Before we go, one last reminder: if people want to read more about this, if we whetted people's appetites, where do they find the reports? What do they do?
I would say go onto the Unity Trust Bank website and you'll find the report from our front page, and you can also find our standout impact stats. And make sure that you follow us, particularly on LinkedIn and any other social media that you can find us on.
And there's lots more great case studies that we haven't had time to mention in this that people can read, aren't there? So thanks for your time, both. Great to catch up with you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, what a fantastic show it's been today. And thank you all for tuning in. And Davis, thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been a fun show. We've enjoyed great guests, and it's been great hosting today with you as well. But don't go just yet. Remember, we've got a 90 seconds with, so you need to find out who that is with. Remember, this is your show as well, so reach out to us on social media. If you'd like to talk to us, if you'd like us to engage with you, just watch on YouTube, watch on Twitter, watch on LinkedIn, and everywhere that we're on, and you can reach out to us as well. Now, it's time for 90 seconds with.
How do you hope your colleagues would describe you?
Somebody who is fair, hopefully mentoring, inspiring, leader.
What qualities do you look for in colleagues?
Values and integrity. You can teach everything else.
The biggest decision you've ever made professionally?
Starting my own business.
Advice you would give to your younger self?
Be bold and brave and just get on with it.
The biggest influence on your business career?
I think people inspire me and influence me every day.
Your proudest achievement at work?
That's difficult because actually you get proud every day. Opening Australia.
Birmingham's greatest asset?
It's people and its culture.
Your favourite place to unwind?
Anywhere where there's really good food.
Gym workout, stroll in the park, or TV box set?
Gym workout.
Cats or dogs?
Cat. My cat would hate me if I said a dog.
Your guiltiest pleasure?
Chocolate.
Sun, snow, or city break?
City break.
Desert island book?
Be a big children's novel so I could get lost in something mythical.
Your dream dinner guest, dead or alive?
Ooh, I think Henry VIII.